Okay, well, 1 second. I knew it was gonna do this when I started it. I knew it! How's everyone doing today? This is episode Let's Do It Live 97 of the 6 Pixels Under podcast. For some reason, my camera does that at the very start. Let me turn myself down. Am I too loud right now? Am I breaking your eardrums? How am I coming through? How's it going, everybody? I saw a bunch of people subbed as I was literally getting ready. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody who subbed. Oh, man. I'm going to have to go get my hat to at least thank you guys. Okay, well, I didn't feel like wearing hats on my podcast, especially as the weather changes here so much. Something I've been thinking about more lately. Maybe reserve the fedora for special occasions. But, I think I had, let's see. Adric lives. What's up, Adric? Sunstrider, how's it going? Woolrek. Who else did I miss? I know I missed somebody else. No, I think that actually might have been it. Okay. To all of those that subbed, I'd like to say thank you. Here's a tip. That's, I think, maybe one more I'm missing. There we go. Anyway, we're all over the place today, as you can tell. Yeah, you got here at a funny time. How's it going, Unseen? So, unfortunately, I don't have the new camera set up yet, guys, because turns out this thing right here, which is the adapter I bought, as you can see. I don't know if you can see that. It has an HDMI cable to it, right? So I'm like, cool. But the problem is the HDMI cable doesn't actually plug into my camera. So I need a mini USB adapter, as you can see. So yeah, that's why I'm not using my camera still. I know it takes me forever to get things done, especially because I pretty much pay for everything out of my own pocket. So most of the stuff on our channel, when you see upgrades, it could be a little bit slow sometimes. I realize that, but that's usually why. Yeah, this one uses the mini one, and I didn't know that for some reason. I guess because I'm special. So I gotta buy a little adapter. It's like, I'm tight right now, but it's not that expensive. So I'll definitely have it soon enough, and I'll be able to finally plug it in. Because I have been using it. Let me say that. I have been using it. I've been using it primarily to kind of get some footage of me just working out and vlog footage and things like that. And it's going to start as it begins to take place, start being used a lot more for on-camera things, whether they're segments that we throw into Death of a Game videos or for this podcast, or even the news show that I've talked about. Something that's definitely important to me is how news is covered, especially in the MMO space. And let's just be honest, it's it's poorly covered in the MMO space. We don't have that many websites that you can reliably go to, and of the websites you can reliably go to, a lot of them are kind of just like yeah, they're kind of all over the place, right? Like, for example, mmorpg.com, super old school website. These days you could find basically every kind of game on there. And so it's hard to find just MMO news, and even then, it's like the MMO news that you're getting. What kind of news are you really getting at the end of the day? So it's like regarding MMOs and online games in general, it can still be kind of hard to get good news. So that's something that I noticed, at least. Especially like when a normal reporter or content creator covers MMOs and they don't normally cover them. I don't know about you guys, but it always ends up feeling just like almost like a pointless affair, because if somebody doesn't really understand the games or isn't familiar with them or doesn't even enjoy them, they're probably not going to talk about them very nicely or explain what they are, etc. So I think it's my desire to create a news show stems from that, basically. It stems from the fact that there's not a lot of good online or MMO news at the moment. And a podcast for me just feels like it makes more sense when it's more off the cuff, personally, because my videos are so damn scripted. It feels good for me to be able to like talk normally for once. But for my news show, it's going to be quite scripted in the sense that there'll be shorter episodes, but it'll be me with a camera looking at the screen and going over a specific topic and trying to cover it as succinctly as I can, given it's going to be like on a weekly basis, so each show will be weekly. So I'm not going to be able to cover like everything in the news cycle the week before, so sometimes I'll cover things a little bit later. But you guys don't come to watch me for speed, right? Like, I hope you guys don't, because man, I'd probably be really annoying to watch if you guys watch me to see all of the videos. You're losing service. Oh, that sucks, Unseen. See you later, man. I feel like I haven't watched the stream in forever. I got a new job and can't watch anymore. A silver lining of being in isolation. Yeah, we also missed a couple of episodes. Good to be back, though. Supermarket crap. Uh-oh. You posted a link. Sorry. I can't even, like, see what you posted for some reason. I tried to click on it. It won't even let me look. It just immediately GG'd you. Sorry about that. Raveniel. Raveniel? I think that's how I pronounce that. Thank you for the Twitch Prime subscription. Make me put on the hat. Solve a mystery or two while we're at it. Thank you. I appreciate the support. There's a tip for a tip. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Anarchy Online video, since it's been a while since we've been here. And by the way, I appreciate you guys being here, and I also appreciate you guys watching the Anarchy video. If you guys enjoyed it, let me know. If not, let me know as well. Alright, so I covered Anarchy Online, and I launched the video the 27th. Rather, Tom and I, to be specific. And Anarchy was, to sum up my thoughts on Anarchy Online, let's see your deleted messages. Oh, FFZ, got you. Yeah, maybe I don't have it installed right now. Oh, I said, I'm sure the new show will be fantastic. You already do a better job than Massively OP. And MMO. Oh, you put .com, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah, I was right about that. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I'm just trying to, because I notice, like, you guys will come to me with things sometimes, and sometimes I'll cover things on the podcast, and I just don't have enough time to really dig into it in, like, a deep way. I can talk about it, and I can just give you my thoughts, and I think that's helpful, especially to see how somebody comes to conclusions on things. But podcast to me is more about like listening to somebody work through things and talking to you, versus like if I'm trying to make a really good argument, I'd rather do that in a structured, scripted piece. You get what I'm saying? Versus like, how do I explain the essence of this and this amount of time when people can just ask me random questions during it, which you guys know me is like, I just get so derailed that, and I like it. I like being asked random questions, and I like when you guys derail me. Doesn't mean that it's any more, or it's not difficult to deal with. Oh, that was you, Pin Zero, posting what he said. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. There's potential for an Ultima Online video. That game has gone downhill. Yeah, so there are definitely some MMOs that I would like to cover that aren't necessarily like maybe what I would qualify as like dead in the same sense, but they're very, very old and they clearly don't have the same hype or belief anymore. I've just been kind of hesitant about covering them because I covered EverQuest and I got like, I don't want to say mixed reviews because it was mostly very positive, but I did get like a lot of people doing the weird I told you so, like, oh, it's still alive. And I'm just like, did you just not watch the video? Because like the whole point of the video was literally talking about the game's like impact, how long it's been around, you know, like the great things it's done. And but people, just because it has death of a game in the series title, literally cannot comprehend a video that isn't, you know, about that. But anyway, the name of the show is literally in the description, and the description of the show is in the description. But ultimately, you can lead a horse to water. Interesting thought. Like UO is launching a new server type. Can you say like the original is dead, but they're putting new or putting effort into this new server type? So is UO dead? Maybe traditional servers. That's why it's difficult with me, with UO, is because UO has nearly always been shard based, and it's very difficult to call a shard based game dead because a shard based game doesn't need as many players, and I think this is a really difficult concept for us to understand largely, and this is something that I struggle to tell people a lot, is that like when your game is built on the idea that people are playing together in tandem massively, when the population dips, it's catastrophic. But when your game is shard based, which means it's more so server based than it is about the overall world or whatever else, it kind of means that as long as you can find a loyal server base, and I've found a couple of in my days of playing UO, you find a shard and you just kind of stick with that shard for a while. Sometimes they do wipes or whatever else, but generally speaking, shard-based gameplay and picking a couple of custom shards has been like the normal way to play UO for a while now. So the game has had a lot of customizability, and the tool set has allowed you to kind of change the rules literally and the game map. In fact, the most recent one that Adric Lives referenced actually has been done. Like, so UO, sorry, what are they calling it again? I know they're calling it something different, but UO at the moment is coming out with a new server that basically is doing what I've been questioning why games haven't done for years, which is just repurposing your old assets and trying to make a new game, or at least like new content out of that. So think of like UO Plus, right? Like remember we talked about Classic Plus and stuff of that nature. Yeah, like we're talking about like a UO Plus here, where, you know, the map can change, the story can change, the balancing is different. They're trying to make the skills a little bit more viable. So like, yes, ultimately the official shards, you could argue that those have probably been dead for a while now in UO, right? In fact, the servers that I played on weren't official. So like it goes to kind of show you like I haven't played in an official server and I can't tell you how long. And like I'm sure people in chat right here could probably admit that as well. Many of us who have played UO recently have not played official servers, and it's just generally because either our friends are on other servers or the rule set are just better, right? Like there's more content on these private servers. Yeah, new legacy. I think that's a fair term, Daedalus. That kind of thing only really happens when modders get their hand on the game code. Yeah, and that's the thing is that why has UO lasted so long? Like ubiquitously almost, like, you know, it's just like it's synonymous with the word or term rather, or acronym, massive to massive multiplayer online MMO, right? Like the whole like that genre. It's to me it's like synonymous with it. UO is. In fact, UO was the inspiration behind many a game, including Lineage, which Lineage is arguably the most successful. I don't think it's arguable at this point. It's the most successful Eastern game ever. and it's definitely the second, if not the first, most successful MMO ever, period, over WoW as well. So it's right there neck and neck with WoW, or it eclipsed it. It's just hard to know because we don't have all of the same data, and not to mention, ultimately, not all of the same information is released in Asia. And I'm saying, like, obviously we get data in Korea from companies like NCSoft who release their financials, and companies like Nexon. But I'm talking about Chinese companies, or those companies who deal with Chinese companies even. Community for those games are pretty much the reason that it lives for so long. Yeah, pretty much. And I think that that's the key of any MMO is really the community. It's kind of why I'm a bit... I struggle sometimes when people ask me about classic servers for maybe games that didn't have the same history or success that a game like WoW did, or even EverQuest. And I think the reason being is kind of like, I don't want to be the one to tell those people, but it's kind of like, I'll just come out and say it. I know people love WildStar, and it's a game that I actually really enjoyed as well. The problem is I think that that's actually a very fatally flawed game. I think it's one of those clear examples of a game that really, no matter how much you add to the game in terms of content, I don't think it changes the fact that the engine performed horribly, that the Dance Dance Revolution combat was not widely liked, especially with performance issues in tow. Like, I think that WildStar is one of those games where it has cool ideas, it looks cool, it had a cool vibe about it, but I think design-wise, it has one of the most glaring and obvious design problems that I've seen in a large-scale MMO. A good example of that is the game is almost literally designed for big PvE and PvP battles, and the game literally can't function that way. Like, this is coming from an alpha tester. I was in the guild test on the war plots, right, and the raids. So I was in a guild that was literally playing the game. By the way, the name of the guild was Condemned. For those who know it, we dominated a global agenda as well. But we were one of the top guilds in WildStar, and our clan was one of the first invited. In fact, I think maybe the first or the second clan invited. Mind you, the PvP literally never worked, which made sense why it didn't work in the end, because they never let us test the war plots properly. But with the raids, like, the raids were very hard in beta, which almost guaranteed we knew they were going to be too easy. And the reason being is the same thing happened to SWTOR, where the game was like considerably more... I mean, like, most of y'all playing right or watching right now, no offense, gotta call y'all out, would die at least one time playing SWTOR. Like, I'll just come out and say it. I died in that game. Like frequently. The game used to be very challenging in beta. They completely 180'd the game. And I think it's something that happens a lot with MMOs in betas, actually, especially public betas, which is perplexing to me. How you could listen to the public perception, the non-core audience of your game, and then think that they could tell you about the balancing of the game. And by the way, I was there for SWTOR. I saw the fans telling people, it's too hard, it's too hard, it's too hard. I wish I could pull up the threads. I know people right now are like, why are you just being No, I'm serious, guys. Like, I literally remember thread after thread. I have to get my teammate to help me because I'm 3 levels under the main quest. And people were dying over and over again. And we're just like, guys, you guys are dying on the story. Like, you think you're going to do the raids? Or the PvP? Like, no. So what is the point in making the stories so easy then? This isn't a point of get everybody into the game. It's getting people into the game who are going to stick with the game. And I think this is a gross misunderstanding of so many large companies who have no idea what MMOs are, how they function in any serious context. Maybe need to be woken up and told these are long-term investments. Literally, they're long-term investments. The money comes in over time. It doesn't come in all at one time. This isn't the Arcade effect where they make you pay $250 at the launch or whatever, right? This is like, we need you to be a loyal customer for years so we can keep that paper trail coming. I feel like that's literally insert game here. There are very few games that keep a decent difficulty. Well, I'm talking about MMOs, so I'm not going to talk about every other game because there's like fucking millions of games. I'll talk about MMOs in general. And nearly every single MMO that came out pre 2007 has a certain level of difficulty to it. In fact, I'll push a little bit further and say 2009. Now, to talk about where it got very casual, I would argue that's from 2009 on. So from 2009 through 2014, I think it gets super casual. That's like a huge WoW clone era as well. And I think that from that point on, people have this misunderstanding that's like the MMO audience is a mixture of casuals and hardcores. And while it technically is, because not all of us can play the same as we used to, I think there's a very big difference, and I want to make a video on this, between a hardcore player, right, and someone who puts in hardcore hours. I think this really, really gets confused for the same thing all the time, and it completely bewilders me. So to tell you guys an analogy, in jiu-jitsu, we have black belts who come into the academy who don't really teach. But these are still black belts. They've attained the rank of black belt. They're very good, very talented. These people train maybe once or twice a week that I can see. And yet they come in and they're still annihilating everybody. Would you call this black belt a casual because they only put in 1 or 2 sessions a week? Or would you say that their time invested is casual? Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the difficulty, is you can literally have an expert in something not put much time into something. And is he a hardcore player just because he's good at it? Or is it because of his effort? Right? It's usually both. It's because you're good at something, but also because you put a lot of effort into it. So it's like you theoretically might just get a couple sessions in training a week as that black belt. But he's so good that he's already so far ahead and he's working on these other things that he's not looking at it like, well, I'm only getting 2 hours this week, right? Looking at it like, I'm very good at what I do. 2 hours is enough to let me work, and the best that I can in that time. So it's like, I think about it like that, like to go back to the casual and hardcore audience and how it's mixed together. It's mixed together in terms of how much people can play, because all of us work at different times. I used to have so many friends that worked graveyard shifts, and we got along a lot because I'm a, person who doesn't sleep, hence why I was up at like 7 a.m. this morning, literally fixing my set, as you see. I didn't put anything up here, but I moved everything and cleaned everything. So I'm kind of one of those people who's always been an insomniac. So I would get along with graveyard shift people all the time because they're playing and I'm still awake. So we would end up hanging out together, but maybe we would only get a couple of hours together. So from my perspective, only playing 1 or 2 hours with those players might make me think that they're casual. But the thing is those players were very hardcore players. They just played at different times of the day. They just played less. You see what I'm saying? And so this is something that I think is very important to stress to people, because I notice that when people talk about casual versus hardcore, they mistakenly just automatically default to it's time invested, and it's just not time invested. And I have to have people understand that, because it lets us understand the MMO industry better. And it's that the MMO industry, since the beginning, from its inceptions and baby steps as multiplayer online RPGs, from the steps as multi-user dungeons and stuff, text-based games, it's nearly always been a long-term investment with a lot of grinding involved comparatively to other games. And another key aspect is that it's nearly almost always been a game that is hardcore, meaning it has a challenging aspect to it. It requires research, some sort of metagaming, working with your teammates, right? Like, this is just the design. Like, this is not an opinion. Look at the early MMOs, right? Just look at, like, when I talk about this kind of stuff, while I think it's helpful to talk from my perspective as someone who's played these games for 19 years and has covered them significantly, but just ignore me for a second and ignore my perspective on that. Just look at the early games that I've covered already. Just look at what they try to accomplish. Look at the words they discuss, right? They talk about virtual world, living world, right? Like synthetic world. Like, the words that you hear, these are deliberate. These aren't just it's massive with 5 players, right? These aren't marketing decisions to say, I want to make a virtual world, right? Like, that wasn't a marketing decision. It's why the name never stuck, right? Like, it wasn't that sexy. But the name made sense to people because it had an artistic reason behind it, right? Like, a virtual world was more than just a game, right? It was creating a world that had rules, that had NPCs, that had a story, that had its own conflict, its own economy. We had economists. I have a book, literally economists researching this shit, saying these aren't just games. In fact, I gotta go get the book now. Forgive this book looking like it's 100 years old, because it pretty much is. And I found it at a used bookstore. But I'm trying to, collect some MMO, I guess, historical kind of stuff when I can. So this is the book Synthetic Worlds by Edward Castronova, and it talks about the business and the culture of online games. By the way, this thing looks ancient and it's very dirty, but I purposely don't clean it really or like touch it a whole lot. I've already read through it, but I like to keep it because I think it's really cool. Also, that does look like EverQuest, but it probably isn't the actual EverQuest artist. But they tried to make it look like EverQuest, if you notice that. So one thing I like about this book, though, is that they actually had economists do I recommend it? I do, actually. I recommend pretty much any serious MMO book. The main ones being any Richard Bartle, any Ralph Koster, and then this one, Synthetic Worlds. Those are probably the best MMO books in my experience. But the thing I like about this one specifically is they talk about the economy. So they had actual economists from like serious universities. In fact, the guy who wrote the book was like a economics like PhD or something like crazy like that. Like if I remember correctly, if this is the guy I'm thinking of. Synthetic Worlds was the original idea of like how they wanted to name it, though, because Virtual World wasn't fully set in stone yet. Neither was MMO. And I think this is something that people have a hard time understanding in hindsight, is that terminology isn't automatically just created and codified and everyone just uses the same language, right? It doesn't work that way. Historically, people were still calling it different things. And this one right here was calling it Synthetic Worlds. Never stuck, and I'm glad it didn't. I don't really like it, if I'm being honest. Synthetic makes it sound like it's just fake or artificial in some way, and it is, but it doesn't feel that way. So I think that undersells it. Whereas Virtual World actually gives you that feeling, right? It has a more positive connotation. So they talk about providers in this. They talk about markets, basically what a gameplay loop is. They talk about addiction, threats, like really just like social issues, economic issues, and just a lot of these like more complex topics, but examining them in MMOs. And this came out, I think it was like early 2000s. So you're going to get a pretty close to the source look at games like EverQuest, for example, and Asheron's Call. Those are two games that this book covers a lot. But yeah, so the reason why I even mentioned this book in the first place is because even as far back as like early 2000s, we already had academics looking at these online games. I always say games with quotations because they're not really games. They're a lot more than that, right? A game doesn't create an entire movement, essentially. Like it just doesn't, right? Like you look at like Minecraft. Is Minecraft just a game at this point, or is it like a revolution of sorts? Like, like, yes, these are literally games, but I'm saying they've become heightened by this, right? And obviously Minecraft is a game and EverQuest is a game, but I was talking more about the MMO industry. And the MMO industry at large is it's very hardcore. And that book, as you read through it, you realize like serious academics are looking at it like that. Very much taking it very seriously. They're not looking at it like this is for casuals. In fact, the way that you hear the professors even discuss it, they're taking it very seriously, like academically. So I think that my point there being that this is not something that's like trivialized. Oh, it's just a game. It's just Pong. It's like, no, these are social issues. This is economics. This is an ecosystem. These are very serious things. They're just done in a video game context with a fake avatar, that you create yourself. Which, by the way, segues a bit into the discussion about social issues as well, which MMOs largely have always been exposed to. Which is kind of why most of my friends who are very into MMOs are quite liberal people. They're very open. They just care about people. They're not as focused on the governments or whatever other policies or all that kind of stuff. They're more just liberal kind of people who just care about people. And I feel like it's well, clearly if you want to play a game where you're interacting with people, then it makes sense that, you would play an MMO, and caring about the people will probably help. MMOs in general do influence real life economies as well, depending on the game. Absolutely. And I mean, people have literally become millionaires because of MMOs. And I'm not talking about creators. I'm not talking about publishers. I'm talking about gold sellers. I'm talking about guys who just sold things, who you know what I'm saying? Virtual goods isn't nearly as big of a thing now in terms of the profit for it, because unfortunately it's a very horrible industry that a lot of the time people get taken advantage of. People get paid not proper wages. It's kind of under the table because a lot of the time it's against the TOS. But yeah, no, MMOs have been affecting real economies for a while now. And I think that this mentality that we've had for a while, that casual players and hardcore players in terms of their play style, how much they're really into the game, not how much they're playing, but how much they're into the game, the depth of their game, or play even. There's a gulf between them, right? Let me say that again. There's a gulf between the difference of MMO players who are largely hardcore and then the casual player who doesn't want to work for things. There's a gulf between these players. So why are they all of a sudden hand in hand, holding hands, even though they don't want to? Why are they in such close proximity with each other? I think it just comes down to, like I mentioned earlier, as MMOs started to become basically easier to play and lacking group or social involvement, it starts to become basically a different kind of game. It becomes more of a multiplayer online RPG, lobby-based game, than an actual world or something that it's not trying to accomplish. It doesn't have some deep rules to it. It's not about the day-to-day, minute-to-minute interactions. It's about activities, right? That's kind of how I think of more theme park games. It's less about what are you going to do today, and it's more about, are you going to raid, PvP, duel, or craft today? You see what I'm saying? So it's more of you're pigeonholed into these certain things, whereas in a sandbox game, I might do all three of those because I have to, right? For example, if I'm playing Darkfall and I want to make myself some gear to go fight somebody and I lose my gear, I'm going to have to make it again. You see what I'm saying? So it's I'm constantly involved in what I'm doing versus I'm not just buying the gear and then just going out and fighting, which is how a lot of these games have become, right? Why does it matter that there's a gulf between the casual player and the hardcore player? And remember, we're not talking about time investment. The problem is because we're literally having games that are made for both of them, which can't happen. It doesn't work. You can't make the game for both of them. Not realistically. Maybe if you had infinite money, or you're just insanely talented, to where we haven't seen this done before, really, where a game can capture both audiences so easily. But I'm just saying, largely, you shouldn't try to do that, and it's just not really going to be probable. You're better off picking which side you want to appeal to more, right? The more instant gratification or the longer term. But as you start to ask yourself, how instant gratification is my game? Start asking yourself, am I making an MMO or am I making a multiplayer online RPG? And I think that that's just something that I hope becomes more of a concern, because then people can start to look at it from the perspective of, if I don't want to have to go big, I don't have to. I can stay small. I can have a more guided experience and do that in a multiplayer online context. Exactly. If you don't want to, rather, if you don't see the point in just sticking with one of them, I think Battlerman brings up a really good point here. WoW retail is an example of trying to do both, basically. And so that's why I think the most recent expansion, not yet to launch, Shadowlands, is basically trying to take a giant step into the ease of access direction. I'm not saying that that's inherently negative. Here's where it's weird. And this is where people have to take their feelings and their opinions of games aside. And I mean that I can disagree with myself literally all the time, meaning like when I talk about the historical part of MMOs and the news aspect of it, if you will, like the actual journalism, I a lot of the time disagree, like personally. Like here's a good example. I think that free to play games aren't inherently negative based on everything we've seen in the media, examples and things of that nature. I actually think it's a very good business plan to get people involved who otherwise wouldn't have spent the money on it. My personal opinion is that most, if not all of the time, it gets exploited to an egregious level, and the fan base is none the wiser. So you see how I can like almost disagree with myself? And like another example would be, I love multiplayer online RPGs. I mean games that aren't massive. The ones like Guild Wars 1, one of my favorite games ever. So when I play a game like Guild Wars 2, people would think, because I'm a big MMO fan, that my argument would be, make the game massive, get rid of the instances, make everything large. Actually, I don't think that works for Guild Wars. I think Guild Wars did better when it had the more segmented realities. And so, even though I agree personally that a massive multiplayer online game I enjoy more, right, from a personal perspective, I very oftentimes can look at a game and say, that game is probably actually better suited not being massive. And I think that's something that came over time. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was always that way. At first, I was just like, everything should be massive, because that's just how I was. But then I started actually examining things and realizing it depends on the game. Like Final Fantasy XIV, I have zero desires for that game to be massive. Zero desires for the game to be massive. Would it be cool to have a massive Final Fantasy game? Absolutely. Final Fantasy XI was pretty damn massive, and I loved it, right? I think a massive Final Fantasy game would be awesome. But why does a Final Fantasy game have to be massive? In no context is the game massive, like originally. Meaning like how many players are involved. It was a railroaded story experience. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't meant to be massive and like everybody has a choice and everyone. It was more about the world story. So like that to me makes a lot more sense not being massive. In fact, I would literally argue as a Final Fantasy XIV fan, don't make my game massive. You see what I'm saying? And that's where it's difficult, because it's like people will just hear my, podcast or hear my video and think, oh, Nerdslayer hates free-to-play games. Like, I see that a lot, or Nerdslayer hates Korean games. And it's just like, I don't think you understand that, like, for example, Korean and Japanese MMOs in general are kind of what I cut my teeth on largely. So it's like, of course I don't dislike the games just inherently, but I'm making an argument and I'm telling a story. So it's like, sometimes you have to look at it. Are you just asking for my opinion of what I like? Because I'll tell you, I want everything to be massive, like a real world, fucking load into the Matrix. I'm a Jedi, I'm boom, fucking put the headset on, I'm plugged in. That's what I want for every game ever. Is that realistic? Of course not, right? This is a discussion of the idealism versus like a bit of reality, right?
I'm good at shooting.
Yes, I do have a new setup, but it's not finished yet. Thank you for noticing, Carlo. And I promise I'll have it finished for next week. I'm going to put some pads up. I also have my play button up there, just chilling. It's not even in the frame, so I'm trying to flex on people. And how am I supposed to flex if it's not even in the frame? Just kidding. But also not really. I remember trying to do Eureka in 14 and just feeling like this doesn't fit the game. You mean like in 14 turns? Or at 14 years of age? Sorry, I'm like brain dead in the morning because I fast, so sometimes like my brain just shuts off. An FF14, sorry. Yeah, my brain only works, I guess, if you put the FF part on it. I remember trying to, oh, you're trying to do Eureka. I see what you're saying, yeah. and just feeling like this doesn't fit the game. Yeah, no. One of the best parts of Final Fantasy 14 to me has to be the what do they call it? Is it the gold saucer? I always forget what they call that. It's in like almost every Final Fantasy game. Is it the gold saucer? Is that the name of that? What the hell is it? Gold saucer? I really think that the gold saucer is really cool. And I think that that shows that like the fan base in Final Fantasy 14 doesn't care if the area is big as long as there's a cool reason to be there. And what the reason why I'm saying that is because I think that multiplayer online RPGs can be a lot more location dependent, if that makes sense. Like, I know that they're instance and they can come across as being very lobby-based games, but I also think they have the propensity to do like what SWTOR does, which is just like send you through an experience of traveling to different planets but like the story is kind of like the main point. And each place you go to has like unique places, unique things to get involved with. And it's not just like queue up for the next scenario like Phantasy Star is what I'm trying to say. So what I like about the Gold Saucer is it's kind of like the Phantasy Star in Final Fantasy 14, you know? Because if you guys have played Final Fantasy 14 or played Phantasy Star is kind of like a lobby game times 2 compared to Final Fantasy 14 because it doesn't really have open world, right? You kind of load into the open world, if you will. So it's more of a multiplayer online RPG than Final Fantasy 14. But I really like that the Gold Saucer in Final Fantasy 14 is so integral, so central to people's enjoyment of the game, and it's such a big part of it. And yet it's not the core of the game. So it's like, I guess my point there is that you can have something become so important in a game and impactful, and yet it's not even what the game is based on. You know, it's just a location. Let's go to the Gold Saucer. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I'm making a fantasy game. Let's go to the whatever cave, you know, and under this cave has a bunch of activities, like reasons that make you want to actually go somewhere and get involved in the environments. I like that Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online focus more so on that, you know, like I like that in those games. I like that they're a little bit more about like the zones, if you will. And mind you, zoned-based gameplay has a lot of its downsides as well. Just because it's hard to keep making new content for a game like that. And I think that's kind of where the most problem comes from with multiplayer online RPGs. Is they're expensive, man. They're just really expensive. And I think this is just a big part of my argument for the more sandbox massive orient, is that it doesn't take as much money in certain ways. And that sounds weird. How does a game that's big, and by the way, Carlo, thank you for the subscription, by the way. I forgot to say thank you. That was 14 months. So let me get the fedora. We're on topic today, all right? I'm on one today. So sorry, I've just been going. But where were we? Yeah, exactly, like people meeting at a cantina and healing. So how can a massive game be cheaper than a multiplayer online RPG? So one that's not massive, right? How would that be possible? How could a structured game be more expensive than a non-structured game necessarily, right? Well, the easy idea is that Sandbox was kind of an accident. Like, we kind of just got lucky because of human ingenuity and human desire to share experiences and work together. Like, what I mean is that, like, we kind of lucked into it all, you know? Like, it wasn't necessarily by design that they had this idea of how it was all going to plan out. You know what I'm saying? And so early games like Star Wars Galaxies and Asheron's Call, and these games that get considered to be more sandboxy, these games actually are largely just missing a direction, a strong direction. So more so, it feels like you have a lot more options than you actually do, cooped with the fact that there actually is a lot more options. Like, I will say that. Do you kind of see what I'm saying here? It's like Galaxies, and this was admitted by Raph Koster, was an accidental sandbox success. They didn't even have missions early on. In fact, one of the first things they did to add content was just put mission terminals in Mos Eisley, where you would just spawn with no mission, no intro, no like help, and then just have to go kill Womp Rats or go take the mission terminal missions until you figured out that you were leveling up and acquiring skills and stuff. Is that the best way to do it? Of course not. Like, normal practices have evolved, right? And have changed. But the point is that a sandbox game was done on accident. Why was it done on accident? Because they had a low budget. Star Wars Galaxies has one of the lowest budgets based on its success and based on its impact in the market, right? Like, Raph Koster has straight up admitted that it had a pretty minuscule budget compared to a game like EverQuest, and they literally made it out of his apartment. So think about that for a second. One of the most impactful sandbox games ever was a low-budget game. How is it possible? It's because building social systems and games, like activities, actually doesn't necessarily require a lot of assets. Here's a good example. If I'm trying to create a world in which people care about their characters, give them customizability, give them the ability to really affect their appearance, give them the ability to actually affect their character. And next thing you know, they start to care a little bit more about how their characters feel, how they play, how they look, right? You think, how do I make players feel like they're a part of something and yet not feel like there isn't anything to do in the game? Well, you make the game very difficult to play as a solo player, right? It's more that you have to play with other people now. See, now we're figuring this out. It's a couple of pushes and directions. That's literally what these designers are doing. They're social designers as well as game designers. They're just, okay, let me push this, let me tweak this knob here, and it makes the conflict go up a little bit because there's less resources. You see what I'm saying? So the developers can just change base values, and the game changes so drastically. Now, how does this apply to a theme park game? Unfortunately, just changing some values doesn't change the fact that we just came out with a new expansion that made everything else previously unviable. You see what I'm saying? Because by design, it works that way. It's vertical progression. I want the newest piece of armor to be the best piece of armor by this design. So I have to keep making new armor pieces, right? Isn't that what that means? Okay, is art and armor easy to make necessarily? No, not necessarily. So now I'm making new art every time I make an expansion or make a content update. I'm making new armor pieces. I'm making new quest NPCs. I'm literally designing and writing and voice acting new storyline, right? I'm doing all of this. This is expensive. SWTOR spent nearly $100 million just on the voice and sound aspect of their game. So, like, now does it make more sense how a massive game could actually theoretically be cheaper than a multiplayer online RPG game, right? And then how is the vice versa true? Well, that one's easier to prove, right? A more contained game makes more sense to be cheaper because you just have to tell yourself, well, let's shrink our scope. So why is Final Fantasy XIV so expensive? Because it has a big scope, because it's trying to do a lot, right? Justifiably so. It has a big audience, big expectations, etc. But if I'm designing my own multiplayer online RPG, I'm not going to compete with Final Fantasy XIV. So I'm not trying to do big story like it's the shadow whatever story of the masked guy. You know, like I can't build this same story in the way that they can with all the cinematics, and I have to do it in a different way. I have to do it like, we can evolve our story bit by bit over time. And so maybe whatever my story in my game is, I have to think to myself, I can't have my power character levels get too high like Final Fantasy or these other MMOs, which are more like power fantasy games, because then that would ruin personally for me the design of my multiplayer online. So I'm not going to get into what I would do to make my own game because that's a whole other conversation. Just point being is that there's little things that make sometimes a massive game actually cheaper and simpler in scope, as weird as it sounds. And there's things that make a more contained theme park style MMO, or rather multiplayer online RPG, more expensive. And really, it's just because, think about it this way, it has to be much prettier. That's really as simple as it has to be explained. I'm not even kidding. Like, if you want to explain to somebody, why does a theme park have to cost more money than a massive game? It's because they want it to look prettier. That's literally the reason. They want it to look prettier. The game has to look and play prettier. That's a big part of multiplayer online RPG experiences. It's why they're kind of inherently at odds with massive multiplayer games. It's why I don't understand why Final Fantasy XIV fans get offended if I say their game isn't massive, because it literally isn't by design. So why would that offend you? That the game is designed for not as many people to be playing it. That's actually a good thing. That's why the game works. Like, it's literally why the reboot of the game worked and the first one didn't. The first one, they tried to make it massive. I'm not going to say that it was a completely lost effort. I think that there were some redeeming qualities to it, and maybe they could have made it better if they would have dedicated themselves to it, but they didn't seem to want to, so who could blame them? Look at their success so far. So I think it's one of those things that you learn as a content creator, or at least somebody who's trying to cover this stuff as a somewhat journalist, is you have to ask yourself, is this my opinion? Or is this best suited for the market or other players, right? So Final Fantasy XIV being less massive, is that good for me necessarily? Maybe not, right? Is that better for everybody else? Pretty arguably, or non-arguably, right? Because people are seeming to enjoy that kind of game, so why would you want to change it, you know? Again, not to say that they can't just open things up all of a sudden and change things, but it's very unlikely because of how the game is designed. The graphics, the gameplay. Not every game needs to have 700 players on screen. What have you guys been up to, though? I know with election stuff going on right now, it's been pretty crazy. Maybe that'll finish sometime soon. Here in the US, we have no idea. I know the rest of the world is looking at us like, what the clown fiesta? And yes, I definitely agree. There's some clown fiesta going on. But I just wanted to talk about just whatever, I guess, whatever's on your guys' mind. I'm done ranting about my MMO and multiplayer online RPG stuff today. Do you guys have any questions you guys would like to ask me? Maybe want to see my thoughts on some things? I'm going to drink some water. Then I'm going to start talking about Anarchy Online. And then I'll move to talking about the more recent one that I did, which was on Crucible. The results have been in? Have they? Because they didn't call the election. So, pretty sure the election ain't called yet. Whether there's literally no conceivable way, have they actually called it? Because I'm just saying, like, again, these are opinions versus, like, literally. Okay, so he's literally accepted? Because the last time I saw, they were still trying to delay in court, which means that the AP called it? Yeah, technically the courts aren't decided yet then. I get what you guys are trying to say, but I think you guys have to be a little bit careful, because all I'm going to say is I don't think it's going to be super smooth transitions. So I don't really think it's official yet, personally. Even though clearly he's won. Yeah, that's... Sorry if that's what people think I'm debating. But yeah, no, I don't think he's officially the president yet. Can someone literally show me proof that he's in the White House right now? Trump's gone. He's officially the president? Because I don't see the proof of that yet. Anyway, I'm not going to fucking talk about the election, because honestly, right now, I literally don't care. Because I'm here to talk about fucking video games. It's not until January, exactly. That's my point. So yeah, well, yeah, exactly. He's still the president for the rest of the year. So, like, what are we even talking about here, right? We'll talk about it whenever the time comes. What do you think of social skill-based MMOs like RuneScape or that new Kickstarter MMO Titan Reach? I think a social skill-based... I think that they're very fun to play... they're very fun to play passively. I think I'd throw Ultima. Well, yeah, I would throw Ultima up there, but that's more just because of the time it came out. It wasn't designed like that necessarily on purpose back then. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's... Anyway. RuneScape, Titan Reach, and games like that, Albion, I'll throw that up there as well. I think that first off, I love that they're more sandboxy by design because I think that they're games that expose people to sandbox who otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to them. So I really like them for that. I think where my issue is in those games specifically is that largely speaking, I'm a very mechanically focused player, meaning that I come from playing sports. So like video games for me, the fun part of video games has kind of been the mechanical aspects of it, right? Like and let me what I mean by that, like the aim, the what's your APM, you know, what's your attack move ability, your orb walking. These are things that I'm very interested in. Mechanics in video games like attack canceling, bunny hopping, and so on and so forth. These are mechanics in many different games on PC that take a certain level of mechanical skill in order to accomplish. My issue with games like RuneScape, Titan Reach, and games like that is that essentially there's almost literally nothing you can do to make it mechanical in any way, shape, or form. Besides like switching weapons in RuneScape, I guess, like which people always try to mention that, and I'm like, really, guys? We have guys doing like insane orb walking, and you guys are still talking about that? Like seriously? Anyway, no, like you're not gonna have these big mechanical moments in those games. You're just not, and so that for me is a little bit intellectually boring because it means that it's kind of just math. Does that make sense? Like it's more about math. It's more D&D like, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love D&D, play D&D, will always love and play D&D. It's the precursor to all of this after all. But I guess it's just like what I like about MMOs is that your player skill comes into play in the form of mechanics as well. And so I know I'm going to have nerds angry at me saying, but D&D has mechanics as well. I know what you guys mean. I know officially those are mechanics. I'm talking about your actual dexterity, like like in that context, like your mechanics of playing with a mouse and keyboard, right? I'm talking about those mechanics. So for me, like RuneScape, Titan Reach, while I very much respect those kinds of games, and by the way, Titan Reach is in the process of being funded right now. If you haven't checked that out, it's a Kickstarter project. Go check it out. My problem with those games is that ultimately they're never gonna make you feel like, whoa, I just did a cool trick. Like you guys ever do an ollie or like fake grind with a skateboard? You ever, I don't know, do a wheelie or some shit? Like you ever pop a fucking you ever bunny hop on a bike? You ever do any trick on any kind of like vehicle? You see what I'm saying? Like that takes a little bit of dexterity. It takes a little bit of like, you gotta do that. That's like pizzazz, right? So if you're playing a game like Darkfall and you don't have any mechanical ability, you'll get steamrolled completely. If you're playing a game like RuneScape, you don't need mechanics. In fact, I know some friends that play those games who you would maybe argue have negative mechanics. Like they're the kinds of players who maybe can't shoot straight, but they're big brained out the wazoo. So like they could tell you the perfect build to play. And so I like that MMOs appeal to both of these audiences actually, and have almost always, like since the beginning, luckily, which is like how I've gotten here in the first place, right? It's like I got so involved in it because of the mechanical aspect got me interested. What I mean by that, like Habbo Hotel was my first MMO. That's not a very mechanical game. But my first real MMO was probably Dark Eden, followed by Guild Wars. These two games are, I would argue, quite mechanical for the time, right? Like they were more mechanical than the games maybe at the time were. So while a click move game like Guild Wars is less mechanical than Guild Wars 2, the game is very mechanical in the sense that it was insanely timing dependent, right? You had to know when to use things, when to do things. That was more of the mechanics, I should say. So I enjoyed those kind of early, more mechanical games, but it wasn't until I started playing Warhammer, really. Like, I just have to come out and say it. When I played Warhammer online for the first time, I think that's what really opened my eyes up to the idea of mechanics in video games and MMOs, because here was I, this Halo 2 player who still to this day, I can hop on Halo right now, BXR, no problem, and also double shot, which is I think 0.2 or 3 second of a frame or whatever. So like my reactions are good, they're quality. My APM's over 100. I'm not the best StarCraft player, but I'm okay. I was diamond. So I have a little bit of mechanics. why does any of that matter besides just like stretching your EP? It matters because it affects the kinds of games that I'm interested in. So, although story is actually my most favorite thing of any game, if the mechanics aren't fun at all, the story better be damn good. And that's kind of like my 1-2 punch is like, if the story sucks, the gameplay has to be amazing. Like, otherwise I'm just not interested in it. And I think that's what I struggle with a lot of these action games is the combat isn't fun enough for me to really care about the lack of story. Like, I know everyone's gonna hate me, but Dark Souls is that for me personally. The combat's never been fun enough for me to like slog through the what I perceive to be lack of story and narrative. Which I know people like. Again, to go back to my previous discussion, this is the difference between your opinion and what other people like. You can't live in a world where you make everything for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't go around and say, they should make every game for me. It's like, I'm not going to have an audience because, I don't know about you guys, but I'm assuming it wouldn't be that entertaining to watch. Aaron only wants things that he wants. Yeah, that would be pretty boring. Why would you want to watch a creator who's like that? Having opinions, disgusting. There's narrative, but it's environmental. I loved my Guild Wars 1 Mesmer off topic. One of my favorite classes ever, by the way. In fact, it's something that I want to try to explore in my own video game that we're working on. I have arrived to comment on happenings in the stream and occasionally make a joke when I feel it's relevant to the topic at hand. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. Yes, peak D&D mechanics, rolling above a 15. Yeah, I know. It's like, I can hear like the D&D nerds in my head like telling me, what are you talking about? There's mechanics. You have to roll 3 and then take the highest number of the... And I'm just like, okay, I guess those are literally mechanics. But I'm talking about like in the context of like, you know, this.
Justin's turtle style. Overcome Rao. Now on the verge of putting Daigo down. 1-0.
Come on, everyone knows this clip. It's like one of the best clips ever. His name's even Justin, my name. Think about it. You would never have a moment like this if there was no mechanical skill, right? Like, it sounds so obvious to say, I know I'm Mr. Obvious here, but without mechanical skill, there's no moment, right? So it's like, you can argue maybe you don't, like, find yourself attracted to the games that require too much mechanics, like Super Smash Bros. Melee. That's totally fair. But what I love is a game that has both. That has the big brain, right? And the mechanics. And I think that there's actually some really good examples of this. And I'll mention a couple now. Arcage. Arcage has some big brain classes like the Necromancer, right? Like the Occultist, like different builds like that. But then it also has like the more, I guess you would say, mechanical builds, like the Shadow Blade or the Ranger builds, right? Where you have to land your combos and things like that, right? So it's Arcage is a really good example of that. Another good example, I think, personally, is Warhammer. Warhammer, you have a, in my opinion, one of the more mechanical classes in the game is probably going to be the Sword Master, the Black Orc, or the, I'd say the Choppa or the Slayer, just because of their self-damage mechanics. So I guess you have to also throw in the Sorcerer and the Bright Wizard then. Those are more mechanical characters, right? And then more like using your big brain characters would be characters like Knight of the Blazing Sun, right? Would be a character like the Rune Priest. Would be a character like the Magus. So like there's these characters that are like, you don't need somebody who's like 14 years old and cracked out of their mind to play, like to like exaggerate on purpose. Like, you need the big like brained grandpa who's like in a cave, like with his own like personally made guide and mathematical formula for like the most accurate build and like dominant build. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are two different play styles. Sometimes you can find them in the same player. Super rarely those players are like god tier players. I'm not that player. I'm not the best. Like, okay, I'm good at researching. That's what I do. You guys are like, wait, you bad at researching? It's not what you should be telling us. I guess what I mean is that I don't take a lot of enjoyment out of creating a build first, right? Like for me, really what I'm focused on is making things better. So I'm not the person who's like gonna come up with all of the most unique stuff. So I like to align myself with the friend that does do that. So while he's figuring it out, I'm perfecting it, and then we can 1-2 punch them there. But again, that's just me personally. Big brain and mechanics, that's basically the MOBA genre. In fact, a really good point, Alundris, and in fact, something that I very much enjoy about the genre itself. It's something that I think that big brain plus mechanics equal RTS. So that's StarCraft. Yes, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that because a good friend of mine, and he's usually watching us. I saw came. Sam, my friend Sam, being a former master near GM player in StarCraft, I've talked about him before. He's one of the best RTS players I know. He's near genius level IQ, so it makes sense that he's very, very good brain-wise, but he's also mechanically, he comes from Halo, comes from COD, so he has the mechanics as well. And yeah, when we watch him play like a MOBA or StarCraft, he moves so fast it doesn't even seem real. Because he's ADHD as well, which probably helps and hurts at the same time. But it's just like erratic, like brrr, fast. And yeah, like that's literally his favorite genre, the RTS genre. So it's funny that you mentioned that, Cassadog, because it clicked, the light bulb went off in my head because I was like, it makes sense why he's so attracted to that genre. It's because when he plays shooters, I think he feels like his brain isn't helping him as much as it should. And actually, I'd like to talk to him about that now, because I kind of feel different. Not saying that I don't feel like my big brain helps me. I guess I would say that I think my big brain helps me more in shooting than it would in an RTS. Maybe my brain isn't big enough or isn't as focused for the RTS kind of game. I guess what I'm trying to say is not that I haven't done well in RTS games, but it's that I've never necessarily gotten that feeling like I'm like, oh yeah, I gotcha, necessarily. You guys know what I mean? Like, we all have those moments where we're like, the thing that we're good at, our favorite game, whatever it is, where you know you're going to beat somebody before you've even beaten them. You know what I'm saying? And like, I don't get those in StarCraft very much, you know? I like the RTS games almost more because of the friendship aspect of playing with your friends and against them, you know? Like, yeah, it's hard to do that. But for me, man, playing like a fast-paced game, right? Playing a shooter, I feel like my brain helps all the time. In fact, I have a really good clip I could show you guys because, you know, I love showing y'all examples that can kind of explain my perspective a little bit more. All right, here's a clip of me killing somebody in the gulag in COD. So I'll show you what my big brain moment is, or what my play is here. In my head, you spawn in, and in my head when I play games with grenades, especially stuns, I always tell myself, a stun occupies one angle, right? Or a grenade occupies an angle. You learn this in Halo because Halo is pretty much all about grenades in my opinion. But I'd be willing to debate people on that. Anyway, so COD is also a lot about grenades. And so the idea here is that this is a very simple tactic. If you guys take this to your games and you don't start winning, I'd be really surprised. I'm not even kidding. But it's literally, when I play Gulag, I do not play to crack my aim. When I play this game, I do not play with the mentality of my aim is cracked. What do I mean by that? Well, I used to be really good aim. Fucking back in 1492, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm like 27 now, dude. Like my aim is there, but it's like it's not like it was before. Like my aim before, you could close your eyes and I would shoot straight. You know, it was I'm like shooting the target. And now, like, don't get me wrong, I was never the biggest PC shooter. I was more of a console shooter. But I learned PC shooter during Overwatch. Won a tournament in it and almost went pro, by the way. Not bad for being new to PC, right? But it was a pretty big learning curve for me. PC was, because I wasn't really used to like the level of like accuracy you can have on a mouse. It's like insane. And so how did I learn from console going into a PC when they're literally mechanically different? It's actually the brain. It was the brain. The brain kept me going. And what I mean is like, there were so many times, guys, that I wanted to quit because my aim wasn't that good. Like, I was used to my aim being, you know what I'm saying? Like, not missing. And then all of a sudden I'm missing, and I'm missing a lot, and I'm getting beamed by people. Like, beamed hard. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I was pretty good on console, but like, I'm just getting smoked by all these guys. And so what I realized is that I gotta change the way I play, right? I'm not that same young, hungry kid with this 7 sensitivity in Halo who could... I'm not the same kid. So I have to think and play differently, literally. So when I play shooters, I disagree with a lot of people who see them as more of kind of just being mechanical. I actually think that they're very strategic. It's just that if you don't have mechanics, you're never going to see the strategy, right? Because you're never going to aim straight. You're never going to know where your target is. You're never going to make the right decisions mechanically. So, long story short, how I play a lot of the gulags is this. I flash one side, I push the other side with the angle, and I push like forward with the angle. I don't commit past the center, and once I've gotten right to the center, I go back through the middle, and I just cap the middle point. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've won the gulag from capping. I'm that guy. I know everyone's like, oh, you're that guy? Yes, I'm that guy. I've won so many gulags off of just capping the center. I don't care. A W is a W, man. And why is it so effective for me? It's because literally I'm using this strategy every time. I'm throwing the nades, I'm checking my angle, and then I'm pushing on a protected angle. So I know they're not going to come from this way unless they want to push an area that was just flashed, which only a really good player would do because they know the timing. They're more likely going to challenge me on the angle I chose, or they're going to challenge me when they come back middle, which is more of a matter of your flicking ability, because we have to understand about rifles, especially, and when you're shooting in a game, is it actually is quite objective, right? Meaning that, yes, your ability to land a shot is, you're never going to be perfect, right? But meaning your angles, you can always make sure you have really good angles. You can always make sure your crosshair placement is good, right? So like your center map, you're clicking heads, as they say in CSGO, or your angles are good. So meaning like you're looking at an angle and you see the appropriate angle. You can't be shot from any other angle, so you're covered. Stepping out of that angle would then make you vulnerable, but you would do that if you were challenging. So there's a little flash off the bank, which is one of my favorite, little Halo tricks. So I shoot the flash right off the bank on purpose, so it'll hit the guy when he's over here. And then immediately I challenge this side. Now, instead of challenging far, I challenge close. Because challenging far would mean he'd have to already have ran there. And since I threw the flash to the other side, I knew that very likely he was going to react. As in, this happens a lot. Like, I've tested this. When you throw the flash, a lot of the time they avoid it, right? Just instinctively. So you throw a nade right over, and then you just charge the right side. And a lot of the time, there's not much other room for them to go. It's like a tiny little room. So it's like, you're literally using angles to get somebody stuck in a corner. Could somebody theoretically, like this guy, could he have smoked me still? Absolutely. That's the thing about mechanics is, I think that's what makes people who are very strategic get frustrated, is that if you don't have the skill to gun this guy, doesn't matter if you had the coolest strategy ever. If he just pulls out some insane shot and just like, boom, just takes you out. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's kind of, I've been trying to, I think as I'm getting older, I'm also trying to like coach my friends along with it. Maybe some of you guys are getting older like me. Hopefully you guys are getting older, you vampires. But just to stop looking at shooters as just like, it can only be mechanics. I actually think like, and this kind of applies to anything in life, you can start to look at things in a more systematic way, and you'll find that it's actually quite beneficial. I think RTS games in general are more about amassing small victories over the course of a game. And oh, Cassadog, that's such a good point, dude. You're on fire today. That's exactly why I don't think I like them as much. Is like the little victories I don't get as energized off of. It could be, PTSD and my genetics, my mother being a raging alcoholic who passed from such. Don't necessarily like to always bring that up, guys, but it's just the facts that I have a very addictive personality. Literally is genetically transmitted. You know what I'm saying? Like it passes down. I was raised this way, so my brain is very much addicted to serotonin because I have low levels of it. Also, I have PTSD, which also affects my serotonin levels and just my levels in general of dopamine. So I have to kind of look for those big moments that get me excited. And winning a little battle in an RTS, yeah, it doesn't do the same for me. So that's actually a pretty good point. I feel you there. I turned 30 in December, and I feel so slow. My strength in COD and things is my big brain and understanding of the map flow and attack angles. Funny how with age, I've lost a lot of competition drive. Yeah, I don't blame you, Daedalus. I have as well, especially like with video games. Like, I've gone pro a couple of times now. I know the amount of investment it takes to go pro, especially these days with how much kids are playing, like 14 hours and shit. Like, yeah, it just my goal is not pro, and it hasn't been pro for a while. My goal now is really just express myself, and I like to express myself when I do myself the best I can. So what that means basically is that I like to play games better just because I find that fun for the sake of it, right? So like, why would I coach somebody on COD if they asked me, like a friend of mine? Literally just for intellectual fun, to see them get better, because I believe I could get them better. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, that is almost more competitive for me in a way. It's coaching and teaching people is more competitive for me. It's more exciting. But I think I'm still largely a competitive person just inherently because I do martial arts and I don't really have a choice. Having PTSD means that, I dealt with bullying and being unable to defend myself or even just speak up for myself, like defend myself verbally. So martial arts is very much a lifestyle where it's something that I do every week. I think about it every single day, like most of the day. If you guys go to my Twitter, there might not even be a day where I don't post or like something that's martial arts related. That's because that's kind of my church, Martial arts is my church. Like, I don't really talk about religion a lot. It's because religion never really worked for me. But the mats, that was kind of always my church, The mats were my church. And martial arts, while I'm not going to say that everybody who does it is like inherently competitive, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to get beat up or somebody choke me unconscious or choke me, period. So whenever I do jiu-jitsu, I try to not have the opponent that I'm sparring with and training with choke me. So inherently, it creates a little bit of that competition. Just because I don't want to just get choked unconscious or get my arm barred, right? Like, the purpose is to try to stop it. So I think that edge always keeps me a little bit competitive. But I think the other aspect is, and this is more of like a personal thing actually, I think it has something to do with the fact that I have a big chip on my shoulder. And I think that comes from growing up poor and growing up underprivileged and then moving to like a very privileged high school and area where I went from being one of the only fair-skinned kids to one of the darker kids, which is just funny to think about because I'm Hispanic, for those who don't know at this point. But I'm clearly very fair-skinned, being, Spanish ancestors. I guess that blood was stronger. Competition is an interesting thing because I actually think that everybody is competitive in every part of your life. But that's kind of why you don't want to always be competitive, if that makes sense. You're kind of tired of it. At work, you're competitive. At the bar, you're competitive to see who's going to order a drink. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like little things like that you don't even think about. You're kind of competing over maybe a job. Like, you're competing for a job or something. You're competing for a position, a research position. Like, you're kind of always competing. And I think some people just want to play games and don't have that, you know? They just want to have fun, you know? Like, for some people, yes, having fun is getting better. But for others, literally having fun is just doing something that's not challenging. That's not gonna hurt their feelings or kind of give them a punch to the stomach, if you will, you know? Some people aren't looking for that gut punch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Some people do want the gut punch, you know? Martial arts does have a lot of application outside Daedalus. Now, I'm gonna sit here and talk endlessly if you guys let me about martial arts, but I'll tell you a couple of easy things of why martial arts is very important. It's more fun than lifting weights, in my opinion, because you're actually doing something that's like has a like noticeable difference goal to work towards, which weightlifting has all of those. But the more important thing is that it's actually like really useful. You know what I mean? Like lifting weights is good for you, but it's hard to quantify that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what does it really mean? It's good for me. Like, makes me feel better. Like, I guess I'm kind of stronger. Maybe you hit your ceiling. You're like, I'm not getting stronger anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but when you're doing martial arts, you always have a goal. You always have a task. It's like if you log on an MMO and you have a mission today, that's kind of like what jujitsu is, you know? We have a mission every day. We have a quest that we have to do. Once you do the quest, you then kind of do it again, maybe see if you can do it better, so you get better at it, maybe practice a little bit, and then you go kind of do some PvP or whatever, if you want to call it that. So it's like, I think lifting weights, ultimately your purpose is to get swole. Ultimately your purpose might be to be healthy. Martial arts, I think, does a lot of things without having to just dedicate to one thing. So what I mean is that when I do martial arts, not only do I get a physical training, I get a conditioning, I get an intellectual stimulation, right? I get some meditation, meditative aspects, I should say, as well. And it's also just more intellectually stimulating for me to do a sequence versus just like, lift this, do this amount of thing. So for me personally, having dealt with developmental issues due to PTSD most of my life, since I can remember, basically, since I've had complex PTSD, which is something that stems for long periods of time. We don't even know how long. I've had it since I can remember. But it always, like, I suffered from the ability to pay attention to instructions. And I mean, like, instructions, like, just straight up explicit instructions. I've talked about this before, so the people who follow me a lot know that I'm kind of not that good at this, and it, hopefully for those who didn't, maybe explains a little bit more of why I'm the way I am. But, like, my brain works like this. And then it just takes in the information as I see it and as I kind of, like, embrace it. That might sound very typical and normal, but why is that different? Well, most people, when they learn from explicit means. It's how most people are taught, and it's how a very effective way of learning is. It's literally like, I give you a piece of paper that says instructions on it, tells you exactly how to cook something, you follow that. That's explicit learning. You know, you learned it from that paper, you have the rules in front of you, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, you go through the effort, you do it step by step by step by step. That's how most people learn. In fact, I would even argue that is usually people who are on the spectrum suffer from that issue in the more extreme case as well, right? So I'm the opposite of that. Like, I suffer from the opposite problem, which is that I struggle with making things more organized, right? Because my brain is so disorganized. And so my brain prefers to use more implicit learning, which is what you would call, I guess, more intuitive learning. It's more of like, my memory is so poor, but I can tell you things that somebody told me. Does that make sense? Like, meaning I don't know where it comes from. I can't tell you even who told me this. I might even tell you I told you this, or I came up with it. But my brain literally doesn't know where it comes from, but it tells me it all the same. So you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like, it lets you know why my videos are the way they are, why they're designed like mysteries, why I'm the way I am, which is kind of all over the place. You know, I'm not typical 9-to-5er. I'm not the typical whatever, place me in a box kind of personality. I think it all kind of stems from that. It stems from the most effective learning to me is literally watching people. That's it. Like, if I want to learn how to play a game, I watch people play. If I want to learn how to do martial arts, I watch people do martial arts. If I want to learn practically anything, I just watch other people and I just study them. And I learn better off of studying people than I do off of literally studying materials. So like a good example of this is when I first came to jiu-jitsu, I didn't know that many techniques. So literally at first, I was like, okay, I don't know any of these moves, but I played football for like 7 years and I'm pretty big athletic guy. Maybe I could just like do some moves and maybe it would work sometimes. Maybe it wouldn't. Just being athletic or explosive. But then I started thinking to myself, I don't know the moves, but I know timing pretty well, right? Like I don't know the technique, like the lesson plan. I don't know the recipe, if you will, to go back to my analogy. I don't know the recipe. But I know how long you have to cook it for. So maybe I could just figure out what ingredients on my own. Some people do that a lot, in fact. It's how I cook. Makes sense, right? Of course, you would expect me to cook that way. But like, meaning like, when I cook something, I don't have a specific plan of what I'm making. I more so just figure it out as I'm doing it. So like, I'll make something, I smell it, and I'm like, okay, this smells like this. I'm gonna do this to it, right? That's kind of how I prefer to make food, because I just don't do that well when I'm like, list to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. My brain just goes like, and just glosses over. And I can't tell you how many times I'd be in a classroom and my teacher would be telling me something and I would be like this. And then see if you can notice the point wherever my brain switches off. Yeah, it would be like that. It, like my eyes would be like focused and then it would be like, they'll go a little bit wider. And then I remember, I still to this day remember this, and it's a story I've told before to some of my friends, but it's like, there was this moment where I realized it egregiously. I was in my college algebra class, and I was like, you know what, today I'm gonna really focus. I'm gonna pay attention, I'm gonna take notes, I'm gonna focus on class, you know? I got up there. Kid you not, guys? Like, it's one of my funniest like memories and stories. Ding, bell goes off. You know, it was like that meme basically. Like I yeah. That's exactly how it was for me. Weightlifting, I feel like it only feels like you're accomplishing something if you're into that professionally. No, I mean, I actually completely disagree. I think weightlifting is very easy to get results in, but it's very difficult to keep results. And I think results are what most people are interested in when it comes to lifting weights. So it's almost like a paradox that people don't want to do it because they know eventually they're gonna kind of run out of beginner gains, we call it. Beginner gains meaning like, right now, I lifted weights since I was in 6th grade, and I don't really lift weights anymore. It might sound kind of weird, because like, how do you stay strong? Well, I do pull-ups, push-ups. Jiu-jitsu is a lot of body weight stuff. Obviously, I've been training pretty much since I can remember, since I was 4. So I guess I already have like the strength aspect, you know, kind of good. I'm not too bad there. But I know that right now I'm not as strong as I've been before. So what does that mean? Like, it means that like when I was lifting weights before, my raw ability was much higher, meaning I could hit higher numbers. But the problem with that is that I was slower, I was bigger, and I would get tired faster. So it was like, was I better as an athlete or a martial artist necessarily? Probably, in my opinion, not. So newbie gains, while they're very addicting, and for me, if I picked up weights right now, within a week, I'd already look different. And thank you, genetics, and also all the work I put in as a fucking kid. But most people are gonna get a pretty quick boost whenever they lift weights, I would say. Like, if you even just do a basic starting strength program, you're going to notice the differences. But if you've lifted weights before and you stop and you start again, you pick it up so much easier, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if I needed to strength train, like maybe I had a competition coming up or I felt like I needed to get stronger, like maybe I was going to go to a higher division, then yeah, maybe I would like do like a regiment and train hard. But not every martial artist always lifts weights, especially just because you spend so much time doing martial arts. It's hard to spend more time doing weights, you know? Have you ever played Ragnarok? I have not, but I've had friends who have, and I've obviously followed the game for a long time. Newbie gains. Is that somebody's name, or are you talking about Ragnarok as in it? Oh, yeah, Ragnarok Online. I think, didn't they recently talk about bringing the servers down so they could, like, put in new content or some shit like that? But yeah, no, what does implicit learning mean? Why does it matter? And why should any of you guys care about it? Like, besides just hearing me talk about stories of my brain damage. The reason why I think implicit learning is so important, guys, is it's because, quite possibly, it's one of the most important ways to learn that we're not taught. Like, meaning, when you learn something implicitly, there's a bit of a saying that goes with it. It's called errorless learning. What does that mean? Errorless learning. It means you don't have problems with recollection because you're not trying to recollect. You see what I'm saying? You're not remembering it. You're not remembering it. You're not remembering it because I suck at that. So I don't want to use that skill as much. It comes to you more naturally, I guess you would say. Now, it's hard for me to like think of how to like explain to people who maybe don't feel the way I feel, I guess, about it. But I'll say this. If you want to increase your ability to implicitly learn, stop being so literal. I mean, literally. Like, I'm sorry for the pun. That was not intended. But literally stop being literal. Like, so literal. Because what happens is it like, I feel like it literally rewires your brain to think in a different way. And what I mean by that is this. So, when you look into something and you think to yourself, what is the best spec for the Bright Wizard in Warhammer? The Bright Wizard in Warhammer might have its, like, maybe a guide on it. Like, somebody made a guide on it. Actually, let's just use that as an example. Even Guild Wars 2 is a great example of this because I was a pro at that, so I'll use Guild Wars 2. So Guild Wars 2, for those who don't know, I used to be on Team Curse way back when. I played professionally in that game back in, again, 1492. But I came back to the game not that long ago just to try out PvP to see how it felt. And I went to a couple of the meta websites and would check out the different guides and stuff that were circulating, and also what builds were circulating a lot in play, just like casual games. And so one thing I noticed was, and this I think is really related to implicit learning, is that when you think about like the knowledge that somebody has who's considered an expert at something versus the knowledge that somebody who isn't an expert at something, sometimes people think it's literally just what you know. And I think people don't understand that you could know everything, meaning like the literal things to know, you could remember them on a piece of paper, you don't actually know them or understand them, right? So this is like a super big difference, I think. And it's one thing I always look to exploit is I go look up guides. Whenever I join a game, if there's a guide, I love looking up the guide, seeing what the most played classes are and trying to figure out how to beat it. You understand what I'm saying? That's how you work on your implicit brain. You'll have to literally train it. So instead of going, here's this guide, I'm going to take everything word for word and steal blah, 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 and then literally just copy that. That's not going to help you think. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to help you figure out why it works or why it doesn't. So what I would do in that context, and what I noticed in Guild Wars, was that when people were thinking about things, they were thinking about them without any context. What does that mean? Well, they would say, for example, say, this build is very strong. This build is very weak. Okay. In what context? With a healer, with a tank, with another condition, with another power character. You see what I'm saying? Like, when you start to break it down, you realize there's a lot of variables. So when you see a guide and it says, this is the best class for the best build, they don't know what you're playing against. You see what I'm saying? Like, they don't know what you're playing against. So at what point do you have to start actually understanding what you're playing? Well, as soon as you play against somebody who isn't exactly explained as they are in your guide, right? So it kind of goes back to my point of being literal. Just to be literal is problematic, right? Because, and again, I know people who suffer from being on the spectrum can have this problem, and I know that they're like, dude, don't rub it in. I know, I'm not trying to rub it in, guys. Like, I'm just saying, like, when it comes to like teaching your brain to think on its own versus always having to will it to think for you, right? It's a bit hard to explain, but I really recommend you guys looking into explicit and implicit learning, seeing the differences and feeling the differences, right? Like, why do you guys pronounce things in certain ways? Did everybody teach you that? Did everybody teach you every word you pronounce, the way you pronounce it? No. You heard it from somebody. You learned implicitly. You learned without even knowing you were learning, right? Because you were just curious. You were just, what is that? Huh? Oh, interesting intonation. Maybe you're not saying or thinking that exactly, but that little light bulb goes off and then you say, y'all. Like me, I'm a southerner. I say y'all. Where did I learn it from? Why do I say it like that? I'm not even somebody that people think has a southern accent. And yet when I say y'all, it just like possesses me. You know, it's because I've learned it elsewhere. I don't even know where. I can't tell you where. Where did I learn this shit? Fuck if I know. That's implicit learning in a nutshell. But just because you don't know where you learned it from doesn't mean you're not learning. In fact, you're probably learning even more than you think you are. I have an experiment for you guys. I'm not a medical doctor. Do not take my advice in any serious context, but I'm gonna have an experiment for you guys. If you guys like to test this kind of shit out, you ever been really tired and watch something, and yet you feel like you're actually picking up on it very easily? Like, you just, maybe a show, a documentary, you're just tired, you let it play, next thing you know, you're like, you're really into it. You're really engrossed even. Maybe even you question yourself, how am I still awake? Does that ever happen to y'all? Happens to me all the time, clearly. And what I always find interesting about it is that the period in which your brain gets tired enough to where it can't just like actively think, and when I mean actively think, I mean like think. Like, I'm thinking about something. When it gets tired, it almost starts to push back into the, you know what, I'm not going to think that hard about it, right? Maybe you guys have felt this when you don't have sugar, your coffee, whatever it is, you kind of feel like your brain's not working. It is working. It's just working in a bit of a different way. And I think the better way to put it is that maybe your more explicit brain isn't working, right? Because it's trying to remember the instructions. But your other brain is actually trying to figure out what's going on. So this happens to me a lot. In fact, it's why I'm up late at night a lot of the time. There'll be times, guys, where I get so tired that literally I feel like I'm not overthinking anymore. What does that mean? It means I'm just, whatever comes to me, it just starts coming to me. I don't question it. You guys ever watch Kenny Beats? He says, don't question shit too much. Don't overthink shit. That's what he says. And so I'll be writing at this time when I'm super tired, or maybe not thinking as much actively, but then I don't try to think more. And that's why I'm smiling, because I know everyone's like, what the fuck are you saying, bro? Like, it's confusing. It is. But I'm just trying to explain kind of my process for you guys, which is just like, I really think it can help in other ways. I'm not saying you don't want to be like me, because then you'll like forget the most basic of shit, but there are definitely some advantages to having a brain that works like mine. not sure if it's similar, but I did notice that I would pick up lessons in school a bit easier when I'm basically dozing off and sleeping in class. Same thing happened to me, dude. It never made sense to me. I would literally remember things and be like, wait, how do I even know what the lesson is today? I slept. Huh? It's probably because I'm listening, I'm taking something in. Next thing you know, I wake up and I'm just like, something about George Washington. It's like, what? Wait, how did I even know we were talking about, or the Pearl, John Steinbeck? I was like, oh, Steinbeck. I was like, wait, how do I remember this shit? Like, it's, the human brain is so fascinating, really. And implicit learning is only something we've kind of recently discovered that literally has differences between explicit and implicit, meaning like there's values in your brain that affect them differently. So when you get trauma in your brain, whether PTSD or like blunt force, which I've got both, it means that everything isn't quite working the same up there, right? And I've always struggled with my memory, and I've always thought that that was a weakness. And it wasn't until I discovered this that I realized my disability was a strength. So definitely for you guys out there that have maybe your own disability that you deal with, or maybe your own quirk about you as a person that makes you different, just look for a way to harvest that. Like, there's definitely some utility there. I'm not saying if you like to be alone to just double down on being alone, you know what I'm saying? Because like that's problematic if that is something that you like to do. I'm not advising you guys to do things that aren't good for you, right? But more so that not everybody thinks the same way. And I think that that's just important to reiterate to people, is that thinking differently sometimes literally is the solution. It sounds so stupid and easy to say, right? It's like, how do you beat the most common build in a game? Play the most common counter build? You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, this has been established for many, many years. But what do you do when you play the counter, and now that the person knows that you're going to counter them, or could counter them, plays the counter to the counter? Well, now we're talking about strategy, tactics, and a good time. Did you guys have any other questions you would like to ask me before I head out? We were going to talk more about anarchy, but we ended up talking about competition, mechanics, explicit, implicit learning. We had some really interesting concepts today. These are like really like complex ones too. Why am I so handsome? Genetics, probably. Yeah, I don't have a good answer. Genetics, and my dad made me do martial arts my whole life, I guess. Those two things, like, I didn't have a choice but to be fit, and I was born this way. It's kind of why whenever I get like physical compliments, not that I don't appreciate them, thank you, I've always kind of not really known how to take them ultimately, because I'm always like, man, I'm so actively working on these other things, and yet you can get complimented on something you don't even work on or can't even work on in some cases. It's just kind of how things work. That's kind of why, like, sometimes I try to tell my friends, just take compliments when they come and don't overthink them, Like, so I appreciate the compliment, just to explain to you guys a little bit of my perspective, though. Identify how you learn is very important, definitely. And I think that it applies to anything. And something I'm very passionate about is that your psyche as a person, like your inner child that I talk about a lot, is the same person that they were when you were a kid, basically. It's just that they've been quieted down. That voice has been quieted down. You're still that kid. It's still inside of you. It's just been a lot quieter. So what I try to do whenever I'm trying to figure something out or solve something or whatever other, verb or adjective you would use, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to think like, how can I do it differently? How can I use my own perspective and feel and expression, which I think is a unique thing, just like all of yours. Like, everyone here has their own expression. You know what I mean? Like, your personality expresses itself differently. I'm an artist, so I see martial arts as art. I don't really see it as like fighting, right? Like people ask me, "Am I a fighter?" all the time. It's like I fought, but like I don't fight professionally, and I'm not a fighter. Like I don't compete in fighting all the time. Like that to me is just it's fundamentally different. I'm a martial artist, so meaning martial art. It's an expression for me. Video games are much the same for me. So when I do well in a video game, what I feel in that moment when I do well, and I implore you guys to feel this as well, or like to be conscious of your own feelings. The feeling I get is that I'm expressing myself as best as I can. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like when I feel like I'm being myself the best is when I feel like I have the most success. So then the idea is to focus on being yourself, focus on working on yourself so you can keep being yourself. And that's probably going to help you a lot more than trying to be somebody else in the long term. You know, like short term, yeah, it definitely helps to blend in a little bit, which is a whole other conversation, by the way, problem I had to deal with as well. I've had both spectrums where I've went from being the smart, poor kid who just wanted to fit in. So I just basically pretended I was, you know, just a normal kid. And I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, you know, I played dumb a lot growing up in neighborhoods where I could have gotten beaten up for being smart, basically. Just because it makes you different. You're a target, you know? Being a target because you're smart makes you not really want to be that. And even just because you're different in other ways, right? Because it's not like I'm a genius or something. I'm smarter than average, but it's more that my brain is unique. At least that's how I think about it. I don't think I'm like so smart. Like, yes, I'm Mensa, if you guys care about that shit, which literally doesn't matter at all to me. But what matters is that like your IQ is cool and all, and it's useful to know those kinds of things about yourself. But like applied intelligence is definitely a big thing as well. And I did not apply my intelligence when I was younger, and I think it was by choice. I didn't want to. I didn't want to be seen as different. I didn't want people to think I was different. Another part of it was that growing up, I wasn't very typical, I guess, boy, if you want to put it that way, man. Like I wasn't like very masculine. I'm still arguably, I don't see myself as masculine. We'll have this discussion today, guys. This will be the last discussion we have today, and then I'm leaving. It's a good one to have. And it's, what are my views on gender and like identity? Like what do I see myself as? Like man, woman, what are my preferences? Like all that kind of stuff. You guys ever wonder about that kind of stuff with me? I don't really talk about it on purpose. I don't talk about it on purpose because my view on it is actually very different than most people's views. And my view is actually, personally, I believe that I can call myself whatever I want to call myself gender-wise, right? Like, sure, the sex of me, I am a male, right? I have a penis, I have balls, I'm a male. Gender-wise, I don't really feel like I'm defined by being called a man. I don't. Because a man, to me, means like, you're masculine, and it has a certain connotation to it that's never fit me. So I grew up with that as well, where I didn't even know if I was gay. You know, like I grew up people telling me, oh, like you're kind of feminine, so you're probably gay. You know, like negatively, not in that nice context. More like, oh, what are you, gay? What are you, gay? Like I was told that a lot when I was growing up. So I get shamed a lot for just being, I guess, different. You know, I like to read. I was a little bit more artistic. I was more, I guess you would say, feminine as compared to most young boys. But part of it was that I was in sports and I was in martial arts. So it was a bit of a contrast for me because, you know, obviously the abuse I went through as a kid significantly impacted me and made me kind of in my shell in a lot of ways. But I think it's why I always felt conflicted in martial arts. Was early on, I thought martial arts was about being strong and tough and a man, being a manly man. So I was like, but I'm not that. I'm scared. Like in the middle of my match, I'm like, but I'm scared. Like, I'm not a manly man. Like, you know, like thinking all of that stuff as a kid, and I don't even feel that way. You know, maybe I don't even feel masculine, or I don't feel defined by this particular, you know, activity that most people see as being fun for men, or, you know, like those kinds of things. I realized that a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed that a lot of men like, for example, like sports, I like just because of the art and the social aspect, right? So it's like not even the typical reasons people are interested in them. So I grew up with a lot of that aspect of not really wanting to be myself. And so whenever I did um, martial arts you would think would have helped me with that, but it didn't actually. I think it made me feel more weird and more like off by myself because I kind of was. Like they kind of kept us separate from the other kids, you know what I'm saying? Because my brother and I were beating people up. So it was like not that we were bad kids, like my brother definitely got in a lot more fights than I did. But it was more that we just had that kind of energy and we knew how to do it. So of course, like, you know, I didn't feel like I was a normal kid because I could beat up the adults already at 13 and 12. Like, this is a concept, by the way, for those who don't train martial arts, guys. When kids start hitting teenager years, they can already start beating up adults. I was already 6'1" when I was like 12. So, like, my brother and I were already beating up adults. So, like, it fucks with your brain a little bit, you know? Like my upbringing was pretty weird, not typical, but like even that aspect like messes with your brain because then you're just like then adults start talking to you in a certain kind of way and you're thinking to yourself like, man, I could smack the shit out of I mean, yes sir, you know. Even like that like was kind of weird like dealing with that. And not to mention like the feeling of like this person's supposed to protect me. I don't feel like they can protect me, you know? Like they literally can. I know they can. That was another thing that I would have to deal with, which are like unique issues, I guess you would think of as a kid. Though never had to think about those issues with my dad, that's for sure. My dad is like, he's very similar to me, but he doesn't have any of the chill. So you guys probably think I'm pretty chill, relax. My dad's like, yeah, he has none of the chill, none of the relax. But it's because my dad's from the border of Mexico. He grew up in Laredo, you know, like my dad was me, but on the border, so he had a much harder life than I did, and I'm well aware of that. But where my dad is different than me is he's more, I would say, typical idea of what a man is, right? Like a masculine man, and I wasn't. So, sports, I got into sports in middle school largely, honestly, to just be accepted. Like looking back, it was to just be accepted. Yeah, I played sports with my friends, but I was playing sports with my friends. That's not like school sports. That's just like for fun and just have a good time and get at it, you know, get after it rather. Like you're playing a game. Girl, boy, who cares what you are? You're just playing a game, you know? We all had fun together. But when I started to get into like school sports, I started to notice that it was more about being accepted. It was more about people being like, oh, you do sports. That's cool. Because when people were like, oh, you did martial arts. What do you do, like karate? You know, like it was like this like weird thing. It like made me feel awkward. And I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't just say like, you got a problem with it? Because I wasn't that kind of kid, you know? I was just like, And so anyway, in my head, I'm thinking like, why am I so weird? Martial arts makes me weird. I want to be normal, so I'll do sports. Long story short, sports never made me feel normal. Even in sports, I always felt weird. And long story short, I aged a couple of years or a decade or two and kind of realized after a while that sports was never really for me. I never really cared about all sports. Not that if you guys can't, I mean, I think it's awesome that people care about sports. I just can't care about it, I guess. And I think I can't care about it because I don't really care about things I don't really do that much. So martial arts is mostly what I do, like physically. So it's mostly what I'm interested in. But it's also what I watch. It's also what I study. You know, it's also what I think about all the time, like prepare myself for. So it's more what I'm thinking about is martial arts. And part of that comes from, for those who have PTSD, you know what this is like. For those who don't, I'll explain it quite simply. PTSD is, simply put, the feeling that somebody's always watching you or somebody's always going to get you. Just like simply put, that's kind of how it feels. So what makes me feel counterbalanced to that? Well, martial arts, right? It literally for me is, well, and things like CBD, CBG, and THC is like medication for me, because what it allows me to do is allows me to relax, so I get the intensity out of me, so I'm calmer. And then it also allows me to, when I'm in that moment, feel a lot more calmer knowing that I can take care of myself. But really simply put, guys, and this is something that I'm super passionate about, and this is the number one thing I would recommend martial arts to anybody for, is if you're weird or different and you don't want to conform, you need to defend yourself. That's just the sad truth. Like, I'm not trying to turn this into my soapbox today, but fuck it. But like, there are people out there, trans people, there are gay people, there's straight people, there's black people, white. There's so many different types of groups of people. Poor white people. You get my point. There's all different groups of people who get marginalized or who have very negative stigmas surrounding them, or are very discriminated against. I think what's important for me, and was important for me, was learning how to defend myself was so important, because now, as I'm 27 and I've been doing martial arts since I was 4, though I took about 5 or 6 years off at one point. So in total, I've done it now for, 23 years, quite a long time to be doing this. So like, why do I still do it? Well, because I love it. But why do I love martial arts? It really is this simple for me. It's because it gives me the ability to be myself. Like, it just lets me be myself. Because what the fuck is anybody gonna do about it? As you learn, guys, about most people, nothing. They're not gonna do anything about it. So, learning how to defend yourself is so key to me, to your identity as a person. It literally gives you the ability to protect your identity. Now, can you always protect yourself? Especially if like a mob fucking comes after you with guns? Of course not. But just like, how many times in a one-on-one situation, or even just a one-on-two situation, verbally even, you could have just defended yourself and felt better about it? You know? Like, all the time. Like, conflict happens every day. People feel marginalized every day. People get discriminated against every day. There's racism every day. There's poor people every day. Like, I can keep going. But the only thing that keeps you safe is the belief in yourself, which martial arts gives you, and the belief in these hands and feet. That's what keeps me safe. But I guess it's hard for me to have this conversation with most people. And I've actually never had this conversation with you guys. And I think the reason why I don't is, I'm being pretty honest today, is I think this rubs people the wrong way sometimes, Like, whenever I can get a little bit preachy about this stuff. I think it's one of those things where everyone wants to talk about discrimination, everyone wants to talk about racism, but they don't want to talk about stopping it. Like, literally trying to stop it, Like, because it's easy to talk about an issue, but like, what can you actually do about it? Like, I could tell you what you can do about your personality and your own personal efficacy and your own values and integrity. You can learn martial arts and defend yourself. Or run really fast. How about that? Run really fast or know how to defend yourself. If you guys learn at least one of those, you'll let the PTSD survivor sleep well at night. I'm not going to sleep well, but I'll just say that. But I'll sleep better if you guys at least let me know that if you can't defend yourself, you can at least run away. And I don't mean like necessarily have to be the fastest runner. That's pretty helpful. Being pretty fast is pretty helpful in that case. But even just like seeing what is going on, realizing the situation, the awareness, that's all I try to preach to people. First and foremost, it's just having the awareness. Having the awareness to defend yourself. Again, I'm not just talking about with your fists. This is not just force. This is defending your ideals, your ideology, right? Remember how I mentioned that I don't see myself as a masculine man, and I don't even describe myself as a man? In fact, if someone called me a woman, I literally would not even get offended at all. Like, it does nothing to me, because gender identity to me is defined by me, not by anybody else, by me. So my gender identity is my own, and to me, it's unique. So there's a reason why I call myself an elf boy. Clearly, you guys should know at this point, I'm not Mr. Masculine. So if you're looking for Mr. Masculine, literally they're everywhere, dude. I'm sure you can go find someone. Even on Twitch right now, you can find Mr. Masculine. Just go through the chats or the discussions, you'll find him. But I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm interested in a little bit more. I'll put it that way. To be nice. The ideal of what is masculine is a social construct, but you can like what is perceived as feminine and still be a man. Absolutely. And I think that that's becoming more and more normal these days. It was very normal when I grew up. That sounds weird. I grew up in the South. How is like gender identity normal for you? MMOs, guys. That's what I've been trying to tell y'all from the beginning. It all comes back to MMOs. They've been the place for exiles, for weirdos, for creeps, for everyone who is maligned in society. You know, the weird kid, the feminine kid, the gay boy, the whatever, like pejorative. Like, you created your own character. You chose your own sex. And then your identity, like your gender identity. Think about that. How many guys play female characters? Are y'all trans players, bro? Like all the dudes who out there who play female characters and probably hate on trans people. Are y'all not doing something kind of similar? Are y'all not RPing? Like, you know, it's kind of like furries. Like, can you say it's kind of weird to be a furry? Yeah, but like, we've been kind of pretending we were animals and like humanoid animals and chimera and shit for like thousands of years. So it's like, I will freely admit, I think that the whole My Little Pony stuff and the furries, and I think that does get a little bit too much for me personally. But is it out of the question to me to think that somebody would want to see themselves as like an animal or like an animal avatar? Why would it be? I played MMOs for 19 years. I pretended people were female when they were men. Pretended they were men when they were female. Pretended they were literally different races and like constructs. Amoeba. I pretended a character was an amoeba before, like when I roleplay. You see what I'm saying? It's just like, I'm not thinking like, what are the gender roles? And I'm just thinking have fun. And we're playing an MMO. The rules and the roles aren't the same. What if I'm a gay cyborg? Who knows? Maybe it's fucking possible. Just saying. In the video game, you know? Be curious about what a gay cyborg would look like, though. Maybe he's programmed to be that way. Anyway. I got a lot of the "you must be gay" comments because I didn't like wrestling and ATVs. Well, I can relate to that, Adria, because I'm from the South. I think the thing about me was a lot of my mentality growing up, and that's why I have a chip on my shoulder still to this day, is I almost like am antagonistic against very masculine style of people and the people who basically obsess about being masculine all the time. Because my question to them is simple. Am I not masculine or manly enough for you? Like if we were to grapple right now, do you think I wouldn't be man enough for you? Or masculine enough for you? Do you think if maybe we tried some striking, do you think I'd hit masculine enough for you? Do you think you'd choke femininely or masculinely? Like, how do you look whenever you're unconscious, for example? Do you look more masculine or feminine? Nobody cares about this shit. You see what I'm saying? Like, nobody's thinking about that when you're in the middle of a fight or when you're defending yourself. You're not thinking about all that, you know, stupid shit. I was gonna say random, but it's not random. It's societal. Like, society is one of our best lessons, and one of our kind of more problematic ones. You know, like it's complicated, and I don't even have the ounce of time or energy to unpack all of that. I do want to read some more of these comments, though. I've grown to understand masculinity to be something far from what people would normally think of. Some people act like masculinity is aggression, but I think it's more calm in the storm, goal-oriented, and so on. Basically just being mature, being a man, being an adult. Interesting. If the problem with that, though, is while I respect that you were trying to look for a different definition for it, my issue with it is that it starts to literally just seem like a construct at that point, because what you described, the same thing can apply to a woman. And that's my issue with it. And so that's why, for me, masculinity and femininity are knobs. That's how I see them. It's not black and white. They're knobs. Some people are kind of more feminine than others. Some people are more masculine than others. The fact that they're gay or not sometimes does have a say in the matter. Like, for example, men are more likely to be straight. Does that necessarily mean anything necessarily? No, it just means that more often than not, a masculine guy is probably going to like a woman. Now, is this always the case? No, it is not. And there are plenty of butch or, masculine gay guys, right? But largely, it's like it follows a little bit of that same perspective. Where it's difficult for me, though, when people kind of describe masculinity and femininity, is they describe it as like, it's either this or it's that. But sometimes people can be both, like all the time. Like sometimes I think of masculine energy, simply put, like an arrow that goes straight ahead. That's what masculine energy means to me. Literally, that's simple. I know that's not simple, sorry. I hate saying that. When you say something simple when you don't mean it simply. But you get what I mean. Like, I would have to say, like, masculinity to me is just an arrow going forward. So then what is femininity? It's the opposite. It's expanding. It's opening. It's expanding. So being feminine is being more open, is expanding the horizon a little bit, right? It's not being so focused on smashing through. Whereas being masculine, I see as push through. The issue I find with most men is that they don't know of any other way except to just keep pushing forward, which literally drives you to suicide, which literally drives you to depression and a whole slew of other problems many Americans suffer from, obesity, etc. Because you don't talk to anybody, you don't get help, and you just keep pushing forward. It's like, it works sometimes. Sometimes you do need that energy. Sometimes a woman needs that energy. Sometimes you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't need to be a woman to think feminine. I am a very feminine dude. Like, if this is a mystery or surprise to you guys, I don't know what to say. I'm a pretty feminine dude. Now, that always weirds people out, and it kind of amuses me, if I'm being honest. If it wasn't for the fact that I know martial arts, would I feel all of this way? Probably not. So I'm not trying to trivialize the people out there who get marginalized, taken advantage of, or even assaulted or abused. But from my perspective, it's just always funny when people have a preconceived notion of you, and then they actually like talk to you and find out you're nothing like they think you are. Hopefully mentalities will change in a generation or so. People will get bullied for what they are or what they want to be. It's far less today than what it was when I was in high school. And I think it is largely getting better too. I know it's like hard to see that, especially with the recent election and, a lot of these kind of problems that arise from such. But I do think largely it is getting better. We are accepting weirdos more. And I think it's just because we're kind of realizing like we're creating these weirdos ourselves, So maybe we should also care about them. I've always played female characters as male because I didn't want to play as me but someone else. See the world through a different set of eyes, so to speak. Very interesting. I'd actually really like to do a study about that sometime. I've always been curious to hear why people play female characters versus not. Because I actually didn't play a female character until much later in my life, and it was because I had the whole traditional masculine view of like, why am I playing a girl? Literally, that was my argument. Like, I know everyone's chuckling. That was your argument? It was. I'm sorry. I used to be an idiot too, just like all of us. We all used to be idiots, right? I think the idea is that we're all trying to get better. We're reformed idiots. You've returned. What topic are we on? We're definitely still talking about the same stuff, I would say. Just being different, acceptance, masculinity, femininity, societal acceptance, things of that nature. And the reason why it's important for me to talk about this stuff is for my people in chat who this doesn't apply to, you're probably like, seems like out of left wing or right wing or, left field. What's the analogy? Right wing, right field, left field. I don't know, one of those. It comes out of nowhere, maybe to seeming to some. It doesn't. Actually, I've looked at my audience and I read pretty much all of my YouTube comments and also look at all the people who follow me, all the people who like my stuff. And I would argue that a vast majority of the people who follow me on social media platforms are what you would describe as probably not very like binary genders, right? I'm looking at my like Twitter follow list. I have at least like furries here. At least 4 furries. And I'm just scrolling quickly. How many people here do I have that are trans? Dozens of them. Dozens. How many people do I have that identify as another gender? A lot, actually. And that's kind of why, like, my point is that's why I talk about it. Because I didn't choose to be the voice of the weird people. I literally kept telling people, don't join my team, don't listen to me, like, for the longest time. And then I started making videos, and then people were like, hey, we like this shit. And so I was like, okay, I'll keep doing this. I love this shit too. But then I started realizing, wait a minute, all of these issues are happening. People want to ignore it and pretend they don't exist. And yet look at all of the fucking people supporting me. They're all weird. You see why I talk about it now? That's why I talk about it. Because this is my audience. We're weird. We're trans, we're gay, we're straight, we're fucking nerds, we're whatever. Like, we're whatever you can think of as being like the weird part of society. I probably have some of those people in my community. So we're people, exactly. We're people. Like, I don't look at it as like, wow, I have a lot of gay fans. You know, I don't look at it like, wow, I have a lot of furries who like to watch me. Maybe at first, I can admit that. The very first time, right? I was like, huh. You know, but then it's like you start noticing it constantly. Like, constantly. And the same people who are like very like supportive members as well. Like, meaning like they're loyal. They post everything. They're posting comments. Not necessarily that they only agree with me, but that they're constantly engaged. I don't know if they're gay or straight, right? I only know what's told to me. All of that stuff's only told to me. So at the end of the day, the only one who watches my shit is just a person who watches my shit, you know? And maybe we can connect. Maybe we can be friendly towards each other. Maybe we share some goals or mindsets or whatever else. But I think that's just something that I believe in personally, is being a voice for the people who don't really have a voice, because martial arts is made for people like that, you know? It really is. It's made for people who've been marginalized. It's made for people who maybe are afraid walking around because they don't know if someone's going to dislike them because they look differently or are different or whatever else. You're going to make me start learning some Muay Thai lessons. Well, look, I mean, I can tell you I'm in touch with the trans community here, and definitely a couple non-gender binary people. And we talk to them about martial arts and self-defense and things of that nature quite frequently. I could tell you that the people who are on the ground floor, they do care about it because they've actually experienced this shit. They've experienced sexism, racism, you know, just literally just being hated because they're different. So it feels strange being a fairly conservative religious person online. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be, considering if you're religious, you follow a book that was written thousands of years ago versus people online follow like what literally came out yesterday. So it's like online isn't focused on tradition, for example. It's not the goal. So it makes sense to me that a very religious person would find the internet to be very weird, because it's kind of the opposite of what religion is kind of, you know, pushing, which is tradition, largely. It does depend on what corner of the internet you're in, and that's actually a very fair point, and something that I think is probably the main reason why I have the audience that I have, is because I cover MMOs. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying I'm the fucking, you know, next, like, Jesus for all of the discriminated against peoples. It's just more so that I think that all of us weirdos just kind of find our way into MMOs, you know? So just because I cover MMOs first and foremost, and they're my favorite genre, I think it just means my audience is so diverse, which is awesome. I like that personally. I have always found being exposed to the same kind of people to be very boring, and maybe that's because I come from the South, like a very poor South. So I was exposed to a lot of the same kinds of people all the time. MMOs were like, I've never even left the country besides going to Mexico, guys. Think about this. Like, I've never been across the ocean. Like, I'm as American as it gets, okay? I've been everywhere in America, but only that happened much later in my life, like 19 or 20, and I did that on my own. But I had, like, no exposure to, like, anybody. I had no exposure to any of this shit. You know? And so, like, playing online is, like, literally was how I traveled. You know? Like, going to Inevitable City. That was how I met my British friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, going to Mos Eisley Cantina was how I met my Danish friend. You know? How did I meet my Dutch friend? Can't remember. Well, Card is one of my Dutch friends, but he doesn't count. Was it trading? A bazaar? Maybe it was the market or the bazaar. You know what I'm saying? Like, you like travel to these places, you meet people, and then you realize, wait a minute. I thought you were just this avatar level 35. Turns out you're level 24 in real life, or 29, or I even had I was friends with a guy, and my dad used to think it was kind of weird, and he was totally fine. I never had any weirdness from him, but he was like 60, and he played Galaxies with me. I thought it was fucking awesome. Like, people thought it was weird, and he was like a creep for some reason. He was one of the nicest guys ever, and I feel bad for old people who play video games, because that's gonna be me someday. But like, they would literally try and make it seem like he was trying to be weird, and it's like, he literally bankrolled us. Like, if he wanted to take advantage of us, he did a really bad job of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if anything, he took care of children, like, as he played with us. Anyway, like, that's, I think, why a lot of my perspective on things is a little bit more mature, is I got exposed to it so much earlier. I had 60-year-old friends when I was like 13, you know? Which I know can be weird for some people, and I totally understand that, but it was totally fine, you know? Nothing sexual. A study or a thesis on MMOs and gender identities, the players playing these games, would be an interesting read. I wonder if a study has been done on that subject yet. So it has been done on gender, but not MMOs specifically. What they found when they did the study, the last time I checked, which I think was like 2011, was that men care more about playing a good game versus playing a male character. And female participants care more about playing a female character than maybe necessarily playing the best game. That's what one of the studies was showing. Basically, the study proved, in my eyes, that gender matters more to those who don't get gender. That makes sense? So, like, women don't get that many female characters that are main characters. Not copy-paste. They can also be male characters. Those don't really count. I'm talking about, like, female protagonists, straight up protagonists. They're not very common. And so when one does happen, what actually the data shows is that men don't not buy the game because you're playing a female character. So what am I trying to say then? Well, actually, making better female protagonist characters could actually sell more. Why am I the only person who's figuring this shit out? Well, fuck. Naughty Dog figured it out. but like, seriously, like, the study was like, I gotta find it was in my Life is Strange video, which is like hidden, by the way. Long story, but that video, I talked about it, and feel free to look this up, by the way. The statistics on this, just look up female protagonist statistics. You know, I'm sure you guys can Google foo it up, but yeah, like, what that means is that Men don't really care about playing men as much. Women care about playing women more. Why is that? Probably because there's less representation, is my guess. So that basically means, like, for me, for example, I'll play any female character as long as it's a good game. I genuinely don't care if it's a female character. Now, if you gave me the option to play a slightly better game or a better game with a male character versus the female character, I'm going to pick the female character 100 times out of 100 because I want the better game. I'm not caring about just playing a male character just because I'm a male. Oh, dude, you have to go to Europe. Well, I'm planning on it. Long story short, and man, we've had a lot of long stories today, but we've just been kind of going off the cuff. It's been nice talking with you guys. So I've actually talked about immigrating before. And I've talked about immigrating to Europe before. So, turns out, I started looking into my ancestry. And boy, did I find some. My brain's dying. You can tell. My fast is catching up to me. But boy, did I find some interesting shit. So it turns out, I knew I was Mexican. Surprise. My last name's Gonzalez and my blood last name's Moreno, which translates to brown. Basically, dark person. I kind of never really knew where my family really came from because my family grew up on the border of Mexico and came from Mexico, but my dad would always tell me that my family came from somewhere else, like on my grandma's side. Like they were Spanish blood somewhere. And I heard that, and you kind of hear that as a Mexican a lot of the times, and you're just like, okay, but like, what does that really mean? You know, like most of us have some sort of Spanish blood. Well, I started looking into it. And not only am I Spanish, I descend from a family of nobles. Not just a family of nobles, they were fleeing Jews. So I'm ethnically Jewish. This is the first time I've told anybody else besides, I think, Card and then like my really close friends. So I guess I said it publicly for the first time. That, yeah. It turns out I'm ethnically Jewish. And it turns out my family fled Spain in the 1400s because of forced conversions in the Inquisition, and they fled to Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, and founded the city of Monterrey. So my ancestors are the founders of Monterrey, which is about, the main founders is about 15 of them. They're pretty much all Jewish. So you weren't allowed to be Jewish back then. Like they literally forcibly converted you. So when Jews came from Spain to what was not Mexico at the time, what was just land, they had to kind of lie that they were Christian. And so this is what started the whole idea of what's called crypto Jews, or also converso Jews. And I believe there's a couple other terms I'm missing. These are literally Jewish people in disguise. So that they're like, they pretend to be Catholic or Christian, but they actually follow the Torah or Jewish customs. So they had to keep that a secret though, because otherwise people would literally kill them and kill them. So this was both a good thing, bad thing, and honestly just completely, utterly fucking random. Like I never saw this coming. Like you guys know I talk a lot about I see shit coming. I'm that Mr. Detective. I never saw this coming ever in my life. Like, so if you guys are curious about what it actually means and what specific kind of Jewish I am, Sephardic is actually what it's specifically called. Sephardic Jew. Sephardic, or Sephardi, means basically, or Sephardim, sorry, basically means Spain. Like, it means the Jewish people of Spain. So, sorry, the Iberian Peninsula, I should specify, which is actually also Portugal, which I also have family that was from there as well. Literally the rabbi to Pedro I, by the way, one of my relatives. Pedro the First is the guy who founded fucking Brazil and was Portugal. Sorry, my pronunciation. I'm saying it like an American, for clarity. Yeah, he was rabbi to the king. So, needless to say, it's been like what the fuck? It's yeah, I'm still kind of speechless about it. It's so what ends up happening is this means that a good portion of Texas-based and Mexico-based Mexicans or Hispanics in general are Jewish, or were Jewish at one point. And so this was crazy to me because I actually at one point when I was looking into immigration, I was looking into what is the process basically. Well, for those who are in the know, which probably none of y'all are because it's like so obscure, if you are from Sephardic ancestry, you can prove it with records, which I have the documents. You can get a citizenship in Portugal and Spain, or Spain. Sorry, not both, and not and or. You just have to apply for it, prove your records, and then wait through the process of immigration. So, I've decided I'm going to do it. So, that's like straight up going to be the case. 2 years from now, I'm planning on leaving America. Where I'm going isn't 100% decided yet. I'm pretty much going to decide the Mediterranean. Obviously, Spain, very appealing. Family lineage from there. I speak Spanish pretty decently, enough to definitely live, and I've been learning it even more now. So Spain is very attractive for me. It also has good healthcare. I have access to marijuana for my medication, CBD as well, hemp oil, all that kind of good stuff for me. What else is there? Excuse me. Of course, the culture, the people, like all that stuff. Like, it would take me hours to talk about how much or why I like Spain so much. I mean, I literally have a flag of Valencia up on my wall that's been there for years now. So, Spain is definitely a top option for me, but it's not the only option. Other options are Greece. That's because my girlfriend is Greek. And then the other option would be either Portugal, which I'm not leaning towards just primarily because the medical usage there isn't as available for me, which is a big problem as I obviously suffer from psychological issues, and I need my healthcare. So that's kind of why Portugal is not as attractive for me. Also, eu não falo português. Eu falo pouco de português, basically. That's like my shitty Portuguese. Basically saying I don't speak it. I barely speak any at all. So obviously that could be pretty challenging. Same thing would apply to Greece, though. I don't speak the language, but obviously my girlfriend has been learning it for a while. Family is Greek. Literally has like a house in Greece, in Corinth. Well, outside of Vilo, but Corinth, none the same. That's probably the easiest way to describe where it's at. How did you manage to learn so much about your ancestry? You're lucky to have so much detail. Yeah, so I had no details originally. That's kind of why I went into it. I used all of my research skills, which, you guys have helped me with, like learn, and applied all of that towards my timeline. My own timeline. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of my video timelines, to my own timeline. And I used Ancestry.com. I had to buy the world fucking package, whatever the hell it was, like money and shit. And I just went to work. I just started putting all the relatives I know, all the names I know, all the names I can remember. And it does a pretty good job of finding the details for you. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek, because obviously I'm not going to show you my entire ancestry line, because it's like privacy issues there, because some of these people are still living and can be tracked to people who are still living. But I will show you guys some of the people in question, as they're very, very interesting people. And their names that when you Google them, you'll be like, what the fuck? These names. All right, so here we go. I found one of them. Actually, no, I'm gonna choose a different one. All right, yeah, I'll choose this one. All right, so check this out. This is kind of how it works. How much did it cost? I mean, you guys can probably apply for the trial and do it within the trial period, so you don't even have to pay. But I think it was $30 or 35 or something like that. I didn't do the DNA one because it doesn't matter with Jewish ancestry, because it doesn't really track Sephardic Jewish ancestry. So I don't need to do a DNA test. It's not going to give me the information I need, basically. But maybe you guys need one for whatever reason. You want to figure out what your percentages are and stuff. And I'm still interested in, but just saying I don't need it for the process of immigration. So this is one of my ancestors, Capitan Barnaby de las Casas Lopez. And as you can see, he has a Star of David here. And yet, interestingly enough, he was born in Tenerife, right? That's Spain, the Canary Islands. Why would somebody born in the Canary Islands end up in Monterey? Huh? Well, he was one of the people originally sent there to go colonize. As was his wife, and then his wife's father, actually. This guy, Juan Guadalupe Navarro. This family line traces all the way up to Spanish and Portuguese, Portuguese royalty. So basically, the Navarro family, for those not familiar with it, nobody would be because it's so obscure. In the early 1400s, they were high-ranking members of the court and rabbis and tax collectors and basically all of the important positions in Portugal. But the king of Portugal gave them a deal. He basically said, look, right now, being Jewish ain't trending. So how about this? We'll let you change your name to Navarro from Ibn Shman Mash or some shit, like some fucking, Yayed, I can't even pronounce it. That's clearly a Jewish name. It literally had rabbi in his name as well. They changed all of their names from Navarro. Or sorry, they changed their names to Navarro. So my family went from Spain. Portugal was smart at the time. Unfortunately, they changed their mind quickly after. But they then brought them in as high-ranking members, and they were the rabbi to Pedro I, etc. And then the problem happened where everyone knows the story at this point. King Ferdinand, Isabella, the whole Inquisition. Well, how does Portugal get involved? Basically, they get involved because Ferdinand says, if you want to marry my daughter, you need to literally kick out every Jewish person in your entire country. So that's why my family fled to Mexico, actually, from Portugal and from Spain, was because they were forcibly made to leave. So, but Ratskis, I didn't know you're from Portugal. But what that means is that I'm Sephardic ancestry, which means I qualify for Portuguese. Sorry, I said it like an American again. Bear with me, I'm trying to say it both ways. That it means that I can go through the process. So I spoke to a genealogist a couple of days ago, and he confirmed it. He says not only does he know I'm a Sephardic ancestor, he's literally used some of my bloodline before, and it's worked. So, I still don't even know what to say about all of it. Obviously, you guys could tell I'm not one to not have any words, but yeah. It's not going to be an easy process, I'm not going to lie, meaning that it's a lot of waiting. So right now I'm waiting to pay for all of the genealogy work. After that, then I have to apply that to the CIL community in Lisbon, the Jewish community in Lisbon. They have to then prove to them by certification, based on my family line, that I am indeed Sephardic ancestry. They give me a certificate. After I get that certificate, which takes about 3 months to get, then I have to wait another 8. I've been learning Ratskis. I'm also Hispanic, so I've been cheating a little bit. But yeah, no, I've literally been learning pretty hardcore. So I'm trying really hard to make sure it's good. And also, I do jujitsu, as you know. Most jujitsu instructors speak Brazilian Portuguese, so I mean, it just makes sense to know something that I'm literally around all the time, and also I have an ancestry that ties me to, and sure enough, is going to be the reason the way I become an EU citizen. So, yeah, I guess you might say it's like a little bit of like I feel like I owe it to the I guess like not all of like Portugal, but just like I I don't know, it just feels good to learn the language that kind of got me out of this place. And I've been wanting to leave America for a while now, so those are a couple of reasons for me. Um One thing I want to say that I think is interesting about all of this is that there are so many Hispanics who don't even know that they're Jewish. That's what's crazy about it all. Like me, in my case, I have 3 lines in my family that trace to Jewish Hispanic families or Portuguese families. So it's pretty much right there, you know, like you can't hide from it. And so it made me start examining more of my history. If you dabble in Spanish, you'll do fine with Portuguese. Yeah. Mi español es muy mal, pero yo no practica mucho. But I've been quiero practicar en la is it canción? Is canción how you pronounce it? Let me see. Yeah, it is canción. Sorry, I was trying to remember what song. I forget a lot of words in Spanish. That's my thing about Spanish is I mainly forget words. Like I know the structure, I can read it. I would say at this point fluently, but let's say 80% fluently if you want to be very particular. It's not my English level of understanding clearly. ¿Quieres cantar cuál? Cancao? Oh man, how do I pronounce my C's like that? Is it can quao? Cow? Can cow? Or am I messing that up? Like I know now. Canción? Ah. But with an ow. Anciao. Ah. The more you know. You're teaching me. I'm almost there. Okay, damn. Well, my pronunciation is just bad in general, so sorry about that ahead of time. But yeah, no, seriously, Ratskis, I was gonna make a section of my Discord. If you'd like to exchange language, I'm totally willing to. And I mean that seriously to anybody else. For any of you Spanish speakers, Korean speakers, Portuguese speakers, even Greek speakers, any of y'all want to speak to me in your languages, I'm totally down. Sao. With the U like the O in boo. Sao. So. Yeah. I'm not doing the okay. I've wanted to do language learning streams, but I just didn't want to get laughed at. But now I almost feel like I should do it because it's gonna be entertaining for you guys. They just fucking laugh at my ass. Like Sao? Sao? I know there's some nasal vowels. That's not a nasal vowel, right? That's more of like a Sao. It kind of feels nasally. Oh, it is nasally. So I'm not being nasally enough. I need to work on my nasal pronunciations. Visitunt. I think that's how I would pronounce that name. It's like kill me over that too. Where am I moving to? I haven't decided yet, actually. It's something that I've enjoyed really talking to you guys about. Funny enough, I didn't think I would. Not saying that you guys aren't good conversation, but I didn't think it'd be something that people would find interesting or that I would have so much to talk about with people. But I had a lot of people literally in chat teach me stuff about the process of immigrating, about where to go. For example, I don't remember which one of my supporters it was, but someone even told me about the Czech Republic. And I was looking into that, and so I was learning about the Czech Republic, and then people started talking about like other areas, and so I'll definitely say at the moment, in terms of the order of viability and also interest, Spain is number one with Greece as a second. Italy is my third, probably. But in terms of where it's located, I very much prefer Spain. And I think I prefer Spain because it's closer to home. It's closer to Portugal, so I can travel there if I ever want to again, or if I ever need to do any paperwork with the government. Since I'll be a citizen, I'll need to do that. So I could live in like Sevilla, or I could live in like where else would I live? Madrid, maybe. There's not that many cool Galician towns. Like, okay, please don't kill me, guys. I take that back. I mean, I haven't found that many cool Galician towns. But what has attracted me to the Galician region is because they speak a different version of Portuguese. You know, Galician is not Portuguese, but it's like has a lot of similarities to it. So I was thinking that would be cool, learning that and then being able to use my Spanish and my Portuguese like together. Galician, learning another language, that'd be cool. But then it's just like the difficulties for me, guys, is that I have two big requirements. I'm digital, so I have to have good internet, which kind of means I have to be in a slightly more major city. Not the most major. Even Valencia has amazing internet, or Malaga, like tons of towns in Spain that are smaller have really good infrastructure for internet. But it's actually the more problematic thing for me is probably access to medication. I would say is probably more important to me. It's my biggest problem with Portugal, actually. It's just like, I know you guys are big and scaling up right now to try and start producing for a lot of people in hemp and marijuana, but aren't there yet. So like, that's a big reason why I wouldn't live there, if I'm being honest. It's just because I can't even medically get my subscription. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think the only thing they have medical there is the it's like some kind of pill or something you take or something like that. They have very early medical weed and hemp stuff in Portugal, but not that much. So yeah, it's kind of I would say that that's a big hindrance for me to go there. I've been thinking about it too. Some great places in South America, some in Europe. Poland is supposed to be very reasonable. Some in Southeast Asia. Oh, I just saw what you said, Supermarket. You said I want to leave because Trump lost the election. Yeah, I've been wanting to leave this country literally since I can remember. And let me explain fully, because that might make me sound like some edgy American hater, but it's complete opposite. I was obsessed with America as a kid. Meritocracy was what kept me going as a kid. Remember, poor kid, don't have a lot of opportunities. What makes me feel like I can keep going? The meritocracy of being an American, right? I could be great and people will notice me and I'll get the success I want. Well, kind of realized that that's not really the case. I also realized that for my kind of lifestyle, which is basically, you would call me a digital nomad, maybe a digital expat, digital remote worker, whatever you want to say. Like, I work remote. So meaning that my concerns and preferences are much different than the typical 9-to-5 worker. What I mean by that is that I don't need to live exactly in the city, right? I don't have to. I need good internet. And another thing that means is that when I would think about the cost of living growing up, I used to just always tell myself, well, you know, some areas are more expensive than others. And that's just kind of how it is. I never knew why, or kind of tried to understand why. And so my biggest problem in America is actually rent. It's landlords. Like, it's not even like all of the issues you guys might think it is. It literally is land. That's my number one issue in America. And I think it's because you don't have much in this country if you don't own land. But they make it so difficult for you to own land. Not only is it insanely expensive, houses are almost like overpriced expensive. Like where I'm at here in Austin, if I wanted to live here in a semi-decent house, I would have to spend at least $300,000 to $400,000 on a house. At least. Unless I'm going to get some small little piddly dink for like 200, 150. I don't have that kind of money anyway, but I'm just saying these are the kind of numbers that seriously you look into to get a house here in Austin. You guys know what I could get for 300 grand in Greece? Like, y'all have any fucking idea like what I would have with the same amount of money? It's like, it's a complete different tax bracket. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I go from being like lower middle class to, or maybe middle class if that, at that point, to, I'm doing really good actually. Well, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, Vizzy. And this is something that I try to not talk to that many Americans about because I don't like to be that person who's just like, I want to leave. You want to come with me? And then just like convince a bunch of people. I think people see it that way whenever they're closed off. Their mind's already closed. You know what I'm saying? They don't actually listen to what I have to say. Like, if you give me the time to explain myself, I could tell you why I want to leave America. The reason why I want to leave is because there's better opportunities for me elsewhere. It's cheaper for me to live elsewhere. The internet is literally better elsewhere, more accessible elsewhere. Travel is far more accessible to me. Having lived in North America for now my entire life, it would be nice to maybe have something different to experience. And the other thing is just like, in terms of mentality, I disagree with a lot of American mentality. For example, skyscrapers. Don't even get me started on them. I cannot stand skyscrapers and how I helped build so many of them. I'm sorry. I worked in construction for like 8 years, guys. You don't think we made like 24 skyscrapers? Like, dude, I can't tell you how many 40 plus buildings I've made. Now, did I make them myself? Of course not. I'm involved in the construction of them. But the point is I was on those projects. I saw them get made. I know what's in the sauce. It's all boring. It's the same copy-paste corn shells all the way up. It literally is a copy-paste structure. It's literally the design of it. So almost like on principle, I dislike skyscrapers, which I grew up in Houston, guys. Skyscrapers is all I see. We don't have any views there, you know? And that's another thing, Vizzy. It's just it's the lack of community. Where I'm from, we grew up in a very old neighborhood, and we had pretty good community, actually. The problem is all those old people died, and then it got replaced by no community. So I've noticed that over the years, America's only gotten worse. The community's gotten worse. I'm not saying it won't get better at some other point, but for me personally, especially in my environment, it's only gotten worse, the sense of community. It really feels like this country thinks everybody's out for themselves, considering how we've tragically and just insanely poorly mismanaged the COVID response. I think it's an amazing example. And that's the kind of stuff that disgusts me, if I'm being honest. Like, if I have to be a little moralistic, which I don't do much, it's mishandling of a thing like COVID is a bit disgusting to me. Like, it's pretty revolting to think about a bunch of Americans dying because basically they didn't properly manage things, you know? And so it's like, I think those are some of my big reasons. So to sum it up, I pay $1,400 to live in a 2-bedroom apartment, kind of in the city. I've looked up 10 different European countries. If I paid $1,400, I would have a house with acres of land. Like, if I paid $1,400, I would have a brand new apartment. If I paid $1,400, I could live in Athens. I could live in Madrid. I could live in Lisbon. I could live in every major city pretty comfortably. I think one thing I'm realizing as time goes on, and this is all related to MMOs, and thanks for joining me with these discussions today, is that the world is going global whether we want it to or not. You guys have seen that, right? Andrew Yang talks about it a lot. Politics or not, whether you agree with his politics doesn't matter. It's coming. Globalization is coming, right? We're getting smarter. We're learning how to do things easier. Travel is becoming easier. Think about a future where we can travel under the ocean. This is a serious thing. It's not a joke. This isn't sci-fi anymore. Think about the reality where flight travel is far more accessible. Well, Europe already has that reality, actually. And that's another reason why I want to leave America, is that I've wanted to travel to so many places in Europe because I love history and I love studying the origins of people and culture. That's very interesting to me. None of this should surprise you guys because I like MMOs, right? So all of this is kind of related to me. But one thing that shocked my brain was that I've spent hundreds of dollars to fly in Texas to somewhere else in America. Hundreds. I mean, I remember one time I spent like $300 to fly somewhere. $300. I could fly from Madrid, almost any major city around in Europe, for less than $150. Both ways. I'm sorry, I know all of us Americans are crying right now, thinking about how we pay triple for like a quarter of the distance. It's just the math isn't making sense for me anymore. You see what I'm saying? It's like the math makes sense in America when you have the money capable, or when you're making money off of the people who are consuming, which is what usually is, in my opinion, the most common thing that Americans are known for, is being a consumer, which is good and bad. Largely, I think, bad, but in ways we don't maybe quite understand even fully yet. I think that's a side effect of the internet. I think it is a side effect of the internet for sure. You say hi to someone on the street and they look at you like you're crazy. Everyone cuts each other off. Yeah, I guess I'm just more used to that. Growing up in Houston, it's like everyone has that mentality of like everyone's out for themselves. But I think it started to affect me more lately. And it's because I've been trying to think to myself, who am I? What is my identity? Who do I want to be? What do I want to live? Like, what kind of life do I want to live? And what would I consider to be a fulfilling life to live? For me, it's traveling, actually. That's a big part of, and I'm not saying just travel and go somewhere for a day. I'm saying go somewhere, really try and understand their culture and their people, meet some locals, and then just explore, right? And that's the beauty of Europe, is that I have so many friends there. Like, people who follow me tell me constantly on my channel, oh, if you came to Czech Republic, I'll go smoke with you. Oh, if you came to Greece, we'd have a Greek salad together. Oh, if you, like, I get that stuff all the time. And I'm not saying Americans don't contact me in that same way. It's far less likely. In fact, only like one or two have contacted me in that context, and they never followed through fully. Or you could argue maybe we never followed through. It's more mutual. Yeah, that's just something that I noticed. Shit, Mang, move tomorrow. Yeah, it does. That's okay. You're making me get into some funny ass topics today. Like, immigration is honestly a hilarious topic. Why? Because there is not a single subject I think Americans know less about. Like, I know, like, it's such a meme to be like, American, dumb, blah, blah. I'm American, okay. Clearly, I don't think of myself as being stupid. But it's, yeah, I don't know, man. That's just one of those things. Yeah, so, no, you can't just show up at a country and they'll let you stay there. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. Who thought that? Probably nobody in chat did, but I actually did, okay? Y'all are gonna make fun of me, but I actually used to be kind of stupid like that. And think like, well, less stupid. Stupid's like if you keep doing it. More like ignorant, because I just didn't know. But a lot of us Americans are ignorant on immigration. And we're ignorant on, A, it's really hard to become an American. Like, really hard. but it's actually very difficult to be an American and immigrate elsewhere. And I think largely, personally, I don't have the exact answers. My personal opinion is I think it has to do with the fact that the rest of the world largely sees America as money. So they want you to pay to become an immigrant. They want you to buy land, invest in something. They want you to bring money, basically, right? Versus like somebody who comes over, doesn't bring any money, doesn't have much money, and then just becomes an immigrant. They don't want Americans to do that. They'll let other Europeans do it, right? And you can argue that's the European Union, that's the Schengen visas, and obviously there's reasons for this, but I'm more talking about maybe the commentary on it. I think it's kind of because why would you want an American to immigrate when they probably could afford paying for it, right? Whether through land, through a lawyer, through some other fashion, right? I don't know. That's just one of those things I think about sometimes. They will if you have a strong enough force. I do wonder what it takes to move legally as an American. Like Greece, for example. Do you have to prove you be a major asset or bring a business over? So without becoming the immigration like chat, I'll say this. It is incredibly difficult to immigrate to Greece. Incredibly difficult. One of the most difficult countries to immigrate to. That's why you don't hear about it a lot. Americans immigrating there. Either you have to spend $500,000 on a golden visa on land. You have to be retired, right? So meaning you're kind of not really in their workforce anymore. Which there's a reason for that too. Maybe you already have money even. Other things that governments think about. But the difficulty with, I guess, immigrating to Greece is, as an American, unless you have Greek family, you're better off immigrating somewhere else and then moving to Greece. Like, just straight up. Like, you're better off getting an immigration process through another country that has an easier process, that's a Schengen country, and then moving to Greece after. Like, that's like the easiest. It's not easy at all, but that's the easiest way if you don't have like a grandma who's Greek, like my girlfriend does, or you haven't been naturalized yourself. Yeah, it's pretty difficult to go to Greece. But there are some countries that are actually very open to digital nomads in general. People like me, people who maybe have global businesses. That doesn't matter where they're stationed necessarily. Estonia, Czech Republic, I mentioned already, was one of those. Georgia, more recently. The country Georgia, obviously. Spain has I forgot what they call it, but it's like their independent visa. Autonomo? Autonomo? Is it their autonomo visa? I can't remember if it's their autonomo visa, but yeah, it's is it I think it's autonomo anyway. Going to another country, the first thing you guys want to do, if you ever thought about it, and by the way, I'm never going to tell you to leave the US. Like, if you come to me and say you want to leave, maybe I'll give you some advice on what I've researched, what I've looked at, what I've talked to people, because obviously you guys know me, I obsess over research, so I do it a lot. I'm cool with that. But I'm not going to tell you to leave America if that's what people want me to argue to them. Just full disclosure. Because my problems, I'm not going to say that they're just completely unique to me. Maybe you agree with some of the things I mentioned. Rent, the falsehood of a meritocracy, how much money is dedicated to everything, how you can't even get healthcare or even take care of yourself. Like, I literally right now can't take care of myself legally where I live. So these are pretty big reasons that make me want to move somewhere else, but I can't speak for everybody. Maybe other people don't have medical issues. Maybe they don't really need healthcare as much yet. They're young or some shit, or I don't know. Maybe they can afford not to have healthcare. Maybe they can afford healthcare. Yeah. No on either of those for me. It's good to know. I'm releasing a game soon. And if a studio makes good money, I'm sure it'd be easier. Yeah, so bringing a business over is actually much easier than just immigrating by yourself. And that's because obviously any country wants you to prove why you're there and what you're going to do when you're there, pretty much, right? So if you can convince, like Spain, for example, has an investor visa, which isn't insanely hard to get or anything, because their main point is that, do you have a good idea? If you do, we want to help you. And speaking of which, it's actually another thing I dislike about America. You can argue it's because it's so big and has so much going on, which is probably true. But what I like about some of these smaller European countries is that they're actually happy for you to come here. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying America isn't happy for me to be here, but I'm not involved with anybody that's America. Like, there's no opportunity coming from just being here necessarily over another American, right? Like, the whole idea is that it's supposed to be equal, which is obviously not true. But in a European country, if I say, hey, I have a business, a global business, I'm trying to run this business, but I'm not really sure where I want to move. Well, actually, some foreign countries literally are like, move here, please. Like, we'll help you. Like Chile, for example. Chile has a incubation program for companies that are startups. They'll literally help you. Like, they'll fund you. You see what I'm saying? So, like, there's these countries that they want good business. They want good people. You just have to be able to prove it to them. And I think that that's something that a lot of Americans struggle with the idea of, because we're taught that we're so exceptional. The truth of the matter is most of us, including me, we're not really that exceptional. Like, what do I really have to, like, sell to my business? You know what I'm saying? So, like, my ancestry is how I'm going to get my citizenship, but I was originally going to do it with my business. So meaning, like, I was trying to offer them something. Here's my business. Like, it's a good idea. Like, I can work on it. You know what I'm saying? Versus just being like, please take me in. Please take me in. Chile is beautiful. And South America is beautiful too. The only reason why I didn't mention South America is just because I'm from Texas and I'm from, like, the border of Mexico, really. It's just like, it's not the same. In fact, the environment is so different. It's not even close. I guess it's just that I wanted a more European perspective. You know, I haven't really gotten the European perspective. I've gotten Brazilian perspectives. I've gotten Guatemalan. I've gotten Salvadorian. I've got Venezuelan. I've met people, Argentina. Like, I've met people from these different regions. I've interacted with them. Do I know all of their people and their cultures? No, of course. I can't wait to go visit their countries. I will after I move to Europe. But it's just more of, like, the internet and infrastructure there right now is just not as good. And that's a bit problematic for me. Now, there are some exceptions. Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia have pretty good internet. Actually, Peru has pretty good internet too. Now, why didn't I choose those countries? Jiu-jitsu, honestly. It's martial arts. Like, maybe if I'm a black belt, I could move to Chile, open up my own academy, and then, work there and live there. But I'm still not even a blue belt, so, like, I'm very much in my learning phase. Well, I'm basically a blue belt, but I just haven't gotten it yet. So I'm very focused on learning jiu-jitsu and learning martial arts. I can't move to a country that doesn't have a martial art instructor. So, like, for example, Malaysia could have the best internet ever and the best environment ever, but if it has no martial arts for me to train, like jiu-jitsu, then I could never go. So that's why South America is very appealing to me, to make a gym, right? To bring jiu-jitsu there, but maybe not to go there to learn jiu-jitsu. I would rather go to Brazil, the mecca of jiu-jitsu, if I was going to go somewhere in South America. The healthcare stuff would be my biggest worry. So actually, the thing about healthcare is private healthcare outside of the US is insanely cheap. And I'm not exactly sure how it works in all of South America, but I know that based on what I've seen, it's going to be considerably cheaper than anything you would spend in America. Hit me up if you're going to Costa Rica. I could hook you up. Also, healthcare is very good there. Well, I definitely will be making it down there at some point, and especially, like, as I work on my Portuguese as well. I've been wanting to make a trip out to Brazil, because Brazil is just a great place and mecca of jiu-jitsu, so makes sense to kind of go there and learn a lot and see the people, experience the people and the culture. But that's why like learning Spanish and everything is so important to me, besides it just being my heritage. It's also because I'm probably going to be living in a Spanish-speaking country at some point. Whether it's for the rest of my life, I don't know, but at some point I will. So I focus on Spanish learning by singing, like canta la canción, or la canta canción, or no, it's the opposite. I said it right the first time. Ignore me, my brain doesn't work right now. But point being is I learned Spanish from singing primarily. I think it's one of the easiest ways to learn, and for me personally, most fun way. Portuguese or like Greek or like another language I literally don't know, like I pick up like 0.2 words. You know what I'm saying? Like I heard follow. I heard now. No. I heard moita benti. Like bon dia? Bom dia? That, you know, that's all I got. Like so I'd have to spend a lot more time learning and exposing myself to the culture. Because a big thing to me about traveling and meeting people is really getting to understand their people, where they come from. And that's one thing I love about the idea of traveling, is I get to meet so many of my audience from different, you know, corners of the world. I went to vacation in Costa Rica. It was gorgeous. I hear there's a lot more tourists these days, though. I'm trying to buy beach property in Costa Rica. Give me a couple years and I'll have some infrastructure built. Well, shit. You know what else I've looked into that's a tropical ass island that's nice as fuck too? That's over there near Europe even? Is Canary Islands. You ever looked into that, Heel? If you ever get bored and win the lottery, man, I'll meet you there sometime whenever I move to Europe. And then I can fly from there to you know, Ecuador, Costa Rica, or wherever else. It'll be a closer flight. But yeah, no, I've had my eyes on Tenerife specifically. I've even thought about living in Santa Cruz, like Tenerife, Santa Cruz, because a lot of my family's from there, actually, weirdly enough. I have a lot of family from Tenerife, a lot of family from Toledo, and a lot of family from Santa Cruz La Blanca, because I can't remember what the fuck it's called in English. But it would be the area of Sevilla, basically. Kind of around the area of Sevilla. Around there. So I have like Andalusian family, which is southern part. Not very much Galician. Little bit of Asturias. Definitely some Navarra. Obviously, I have a Navarro name in my fucking history. But yeah, largely I am probably more Castilian. Castilian and Andalusian. Yeah, I'm probably more Castilian and Andalusian, which means I'm more center Spanish, more South Spanish. For those who haven't been to Spain or don't study Spain much, this probably just sounds like regions and areas. They're not only they're different, they'll get offended if you refer to them as like the same people. Like Galicians are not Catalonians, are not Spanish, are not, you know, Andalusian. You know what I'm saying? It's like they are, but they're not. It's like when you ask a Sicilian, are you Italian? They're going to tell you, no, I'm Sicilian. Right? It's something different. So it seems like it's like what's the word? And what is the word? Not formulaic, but I can't think of the damn word. My brain's not working. So you were saying because your ancestry's from the U, that will take you back. So broadly, that's why. Like a lot of countries have what's called jus sanguinis. And sorry for my Latin pronunciation. Probably ain't good because I don't know Latin. Basically means right of blood. A lot of countries have right of blood, actually. Like Poland, Austria, Hungary, Germany, Greece, Italy, Ireland, a couple other ones. There's a couple other ones. But jus sanguinis is probably one of the easiest ways to get a citizenship, because it means that you have some sort of heritage or blood right. Now, where it's interesting is if you don't have any European history, obviously, doesn't help you in the slightest. But if you do have like European family, just figure out where they come from and then just look up that country, nationality, law, or, jus sanguinis, this country name. That's how you figure it out, basically. There's also literally an article. I'll just link it because it's just a fucking Wikipedia. But I even have it open because I was looking at it. But this is really interesting to me, so I'll pull it up on screen. As you can see, let me zoom in because you can't see shit. See, look, the states that have blood rights. Well, it says states, but you know what it means. Austria, Armenia, Canada, Chile, China, Colombia, Czech Republic, Denmark, and they all have like different requirements. Some are like, it has to be your dad, some has to be your like grandpa, some has to be just any heritage period, like Hungary. Yeah, see, it's weird because I have some ancestors from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but I don't know if they're actually like Hungarians. They're probably Austrian based on where they were from, but the problem with the reason why I'd rather than be Hungarian is because Hungary allows you to have dual citizenship. Austria does not. Austria makes you relinquish your citizenship, so clearly I'm not going to relinquish my English citizenship. It doesn't make any sense. Or American citizenship, you know what I mean? And then there's a couple other ones here. India, Ireland, as I mentioned, Israel, Italy, Japan. Yeah, so not a ton of countries, but definitely some. And then there's some that are actually ethnic as well. So maybe you were born from a citizen here, but this is like you're of a citizen's blood. Like used to be a citizen. And this one talks about like what are the different requirements. This is usually naturalization, they call it. But if you zoom in here, you can actually read what I'll be doing. A Spanish law passed in 2015 allows individuals who can prove descent from Sephardic Jews who were exiled in 1492 following the Alhambra decree, and who can show a special link to Spain to apply for dual citizenship. This exact law isn't in, it doesn't function anymore. They went back to the previous law, which is actually a harder process, but Portugal actually has the same exact process. So if you just, oh, they didn't even put, I wonder why they didn't even put it on here. All right, here we go. All right, so this is what I'll be doing for those that are curious. And if you're wondering, does this mean you have to be religiously Jewish? The answer is no. Though I'm not against the idea of ever, but yeah. It's not what this is about. So as it says here, Iberian Jewish, basically, Sephardic is what it means. You can apply for Spanish citizenship or Portuguese citizenship. So that's what I'll be doing here, as you can see. You have to go through this process where you show them family tree. They get all these documents. All of it's translated into Portuguese, and then Portuguese, and then you submit all of that paperwork to the immigration office in, Portugal or wherever you're trying to apply. Obviously, this one's for Portugal, so And you have to wait like fucking a year and a half. So it's the, I mean, it's the only thing that sucks about the process is I'm gonna have to wait, but I was gonna wait anyway. So that's why it's not really that much of a difference for me, because I was already gonna wait 2 years to finish my degree anyway. Because I basically took this whole year off of school, so I wanted to take another 2 years to finish my degree before I left America, and obviously take the time to get my affairs in order, save money, all that important stuff that you need to do. So regardless, it looks like the timeline could end up working out for me, but we'll see. Just about money now. I just have to pay for the lawyers and pay for the genealogist. The good news is all in all, it's going to be less than $3,000. Which I know sounds like a lot, but comparatively, to get EU citizenship, Portugal citizenship, which extends sort of EU citizenship. I hate saying EU citizenship because then it feeds the meme that Americans think that Europeans are all one country. Like it's a joke, but non-ironically, there's people who actually think that. So I keyed, but somebody not keyed. See you later, Sunstrider. Have a good one. Thanks, Ratskis. I appreciate it. Yeah, for sure, Vizzy. And who knows? You could have Hungarian, Polish, whatever kind of blood in you. And you just have to basically do your ancestry, do your work, and then just reach out to the consulate for whoever you're trying to apply to. That's really just, if any of you are ever curious if you can apply for any of this stuff, I would just look into the history, send the consulate an email, and just say, hey, do you think I would qualify? Like, is this possible? Like, what's the process? And a lot more realistic than people think. And I really like, if you had the means and the ability to get a dual citizenship, I mean, why wouldn't you, basically? Like, even if one of you in chat right now is like, I love America, I'm Team America forever. Why not get a dual citizenship if you can, though? If you're like Hungarian descent, why not just get that, dude? Then you could travel anywhere and not have to worry about all of the rules and the Schengen visa and stuff. Like, I mean, that seems pretty cool. That seems worth it to me. But I guess if you're never going to go to Europe, then yeah, maybe having an EU citizenship in any country doesn't make any sense. Will America make you pay taxes still? Depends on the country that you have your dual citizenship with. In my case, yes, but that's because Portugal won't make me pay taxes. So basically it's the same. The exact same. I just pay taxes to America. And as long as I'm not working in Portugal, like I don't have a job there, I don't have to file my taxes there. So that's a big reason why I'm very excited to be a Portuguese citizen, is that they seem to have a pretty rational way of looking at a lot of this stuff. Their healthcare makes more sense. The way that they look at paying taxes, having dual citizenship, and I don't have to relinquish anything or some weird shit. Like, it's 2020. Why am I relinquishing my citizenships anyway? Like, I think that that's outdated, if I'm being honest. So no, it's been a weird but cool and fun process. You have a duel, it just gives a little bit more peace of mind when you have two countries that could have your back. I think that too, like, because you never know like how things could go in the future, wherever you're at. I mean, obviously, Rome probably never thought it was gonna fall, right? But we all know the story of that, or at least we know parts of it. The story is actually really fucking long, so I'd be surprised if all of us knew the story. To be honest, I don't even know all of the story. It's like I feel like I learn something new every time I read about Rome. Yeah, so having a global business, I think the future of having a global business is going to be moving to other countries and having dual citizenships. Maybe even 3 citizenships. Or no. It's possible. Anyway, I'm sufficiently hungry. I've chatted with you guys enough as I like burp because I'm like, my stomach's like, please feed me. Sorry about that. Thank you for stopping by, listening to me chat today. Obviously, this was more of an off the cuff. Full disclosure, I was up till 7 a.m. this morning working on the the Anthem script. And Then I fucking... I'll tell the story before I leave. I literally saw a roach on my desk yesterday. Like, literally saw him. Like, I was face to face with this guy. I don't know, like, what did I do to this guy? But he showed up on my desk, like, face to face with me yesterday. So, needless to say, I took that as an opportunity to scorched earth my entire room. And I tracked that motherfucker down and had to kill him. Dude, he took forever to die, and he was huge. Like, clearly was probably gonna try to have babies or some gross ass shit. Like, bro, I was up for 2 hours doing that shit. I was throwing away the trash. It was like 5 a.m. Like, I'm walking around, like, I'm banging shit around. I'm like, fuck, like, is everyone gonna think I'm weird or like robbing someone or like something? Like, cause everything was so loud because it was so quiet, but I'm literally trying to track this roach down. So I finally track the motherfucker down. I kill him. I take away whatever trash just in case, you know? And yeah, no, that big ass roach, man. There's roaches outside. I've seen them outside. I hate my apartment here. But they've never really been a big problem for us. That was the first time he was a big problem. So yeah, it was I fucking scorched earth this shit. I fucking started cleaning everything around. In fact, I'm still gonna do my shampooing of the carpet today because I was like, I'm not stopping there. I'm committing like to cleaning everything. But yeah, so I was up till fucking like 8 a.m., dude, and then I like got like a 2-3 hours sleep, and yeah, here we are 3 hours later after the podcast. So that's why I'm off the cuff today. It's because I've been writing Anthem, and it's going to be done writing this week. So probably look to launch next week. And then after that, we have an even bigger game planned than Anthem. And that's crazy. How do you go even bigger than Anthem? Well, there's an even bigger failure that just happened. So we have some huge titles planned, and that, yes, will mean that in the past month, we've put out, by the time it's the next month, 4 Death of a Games. So yeah, that's the goal. 4 Death of the Games. We're already at 2 of them. We got another one cooking right now. I already have all of the research done, just writing it and voicing it. And then getting started on the next one, which somebody already guessed, which I appreciate. You declared war on the cricket. Dude, send them to me. Send the crickets to me. I have a bearded dragon. And no joke, I wish I had crickets infesting me versus roaches. Because at least my lizard can eat the fucks. He can't eat the roach. The roach is bigger than him. Okay, it's not bigger than him. But you get my point. That thing was huge. So with him, like, yeah, he'll get down on worms, like mealworms, mice, crickets, roach. Peace out, bro. I'm good, dude. I ain't touching that nasty shit. And he'll run away, dude. They're too fast. So, like, yeah, no, if you got some crickets, man, send them over, dude. Appreciate it. Just kidding, but I actually do get crickets delivered, like, jokingly. Like, I think most people get them delivered when you have lizards like us. Unless you have, like, a place near you or something. Already used your bug spray and chlorine. Damn. Well, actually, they might have a good diet. I'm just kidding. But, all right, guys. As I'm holding my camera in my hand for some reason. I'm promising to use it next week, maybe. No, I can't promise that because then I have to pay for this cable, and I'm not made of money, guys. The reason why shit moves slowly here is because I have to pay for it myself. So, when it's ready, I know that's not the sexiest answer. Trust me, you don't think I want to be using this camera more after I spent money on it? Of course I want to use it for streaming, but I'll just have to wait, and who knows? Maybe next podcast we'll have it, depending on a couple of things. But one thing's for sure, we'll have it by the end of this month. So that's exciting to look forward to. I'd like to thank you all for stopping by and joining me again, chatting with me. Today was very off the cuff, as I usually like it, but more than usual since I was awake not that long ago. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and look forward to the next Death of a Game, which is going to be on Anthem. And then following that, Marvel Avengers, since someone already guessed it, I'll go ahead and throw that out there. So we have some really fun videos planned next, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, good rest of your evening or night if you're in another country or on the other side of the world. And yeah, I've got nothing else for you guys. Peace out.